What's going on, people? Hello, anybody there?
Hello.
Yep.
Somebody didn't set this meeting up correctly with security. Know how I know? Hello, anybody there?
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Oh, I was muted apparently. This is John Geyer.
How's it going? Hello?
Good evening.
We're just finishing up. We'll be there in just a minute.
You guys have your security set up wrong.
Nope.
Zoom bomber. Hey, what's up, puppy? Hey, baby, come here. Hey, girl. Can you speak into the mic? Say hi to all these people. I can still unmute myself.
Hello, everyone. We'll get started momentarily.
How's it going?
Good.
I can still come back. Don't give me the opportunity to unmute myself. That solves this problem.
Yeah.
Mr. Monticello, could we mute everyone? Is that possible?
One more review. Is Mark going to take away? There we go. Okay. Are we ready to start? Is the board unmuted?
I am here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was gonna make a suggestion. Maybe if everybody other than the board members turned their video off while we were in this stage of the meeting. I think when we get to public comments, it would be helpful to have the video on. There is the raise the hand feature in Zoom, but also sometimes my experience over the hundreds of hours I've spent on Zoom in the last week is that it helps for people to wave their hand as well. So videos off and mute, everybody muted. Mr. Monticello, if that is feasible.
Okay. We are back from closed session and we have no announcements from closed session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
of
United
the
States
United States
of
of
America
America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Guess we're gonna have to work on our getting that all together, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of hard with the delay. Okay, roll call. We have Foster, O'Halloran, Masita, and Jewel. Have you made it back on? Okay, so I think Miss Fink is going to be back shortly, I hope.
It doesn't look like he's on yet.
Okay. Notice to public. Persons wishing to speak to agenda items may present their written request at this time. While the written request is optional, those making a written request will be recognized first. Persons wishing to introduce a subject not on the agenda may also present their request at this time. The board president will recognize you for the discussion at the appropriate time. Non-scheduled agenda items will be introduced under Section 9 on the agenda. Speakers may be limited to 5 minutes per topic at the discretion of the board president. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9324B, the district may tape, film, stream, or broadcast any open board meeting. The recording or broadcast may capture images or sounds of those attending the meeting. Any district recording may be erased or destroyed 30 days after the meeting. Recordings made at the direction of the board during a meeting are public records and upon request shall be made available for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Obviously, this is a little different situation, so I believe Mark has muted everyone. So what we will do is when it's time for public comment, we will mention that, and then if people would please use the raise their hand function, he will take off your mute one at a time so that people can speak, and we will take the time to try to get everyone to be able to voice their opinions and their questions. Okay.
And real quick, Luke, if you're not familiar with the raise your hand function, on the toolbar at the bottom, if you click on participants, it'll give you the list. We're up to 52 out there. Thank you, everybody. And on the right-hand bottom side, you hover over it and it lights up for you to raise your hand. So we will do our best to navigate this smoothly, but please understand, this is our first time doing it quite all this way. So that's it. Back to you, Luke. Thank you.
Yes, well said. Thank you. And I think the chat function may also work, correct? So
No, it's disabled.
it's disabled. Okay.
Yeah, we disabled chat because it would pose a Brown Act challenge to us to have
Gotcha. Okay.
a dialogue going on while the meeting was happening.
Okay, great. Okay, so do we have any recognition of guests and presentations?
None, just the 54 people out there. Thank you for joining the meeting.
Any correspondence?
None tonight.
Okay, we have the consent agenda. Are there any board questions or comments on the consent agenda?
No.
Any public questions or comments on the consent agenda? Please raise your hand at this time. Mark, do we have anyone wanting to comment on the consent agenda?
I see none at this time. It does take me a little bit because there's 3 pages of users.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Let me know when you've gone through everyone.
I am seeing none. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Now, it looks like we're being Zoom bombed.
I was gonna say, what the heck is that?
Well, somebody at the beginning said that we don't have our security set up, and so they must, maybe
yeah.
they're trying to prove.
Okay, So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I as well. Jewel, are you on the line yet? No, okay, but we have a consensus. The consent agenda passes. Okay. Public comment. Mark, anything you can do to lock that down would be good. Public comment. Oh,
I'm sorry, but the problem is I don't know who these users are. It's a general public meeting and I'm just letting everybody in.
yeah,
So some of them are coming in and doing those things. So I will kick them out as soon as we have those things pop up.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
So I forgot, as part of the consent agenda, I think we wanted to move around our order tonight a little, didn't we?
No, we're set up the way we discussed.
Didn't you want to move take the report on COVID-19 down at the bottom? So we go board vacancy, then the grading issue, and then the COVID-19, or do you want to
That's
just?
how it's set up.
That's the order.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the old agenda then. Okay,
Yeah, that is the order tonight.
okay. Public comment. Persons wishing to introduce a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district and not on the agenda may do so at this time. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Comments may be limited to 5 minutes per person to a maximum of 25 minutes per topic unless extended by the board president. Comments are to be directed exclusively to the governing board, and the board president shall determine who, if anyone, may respond to the comments or questions of the speaker. Okay, information, discussion, and action.
All right, so if I can give a brief introduction to this first item. So in the middle of March, John Gabby resigned from the governing board, which created a vacancy, which under the education code and our board bylaws, we are required to fill. So we had a 2-week period for applicants to express their interest in serving in the remainder of basically this term year, meaning that whoever is appointed to the seat tonight would serve until December. This seat will be up on the ballot for the November election for the remainder of the 4-year term that Mr. Gabby was in. So that's a 2-year term that will be added to the 2 4-year terms, which are already scheduled to be on the ballot. So to restate it, this appointment process will fill the seat until until December. December on will be determined in the general election held in November. So we're fortunate that we had 2 really qualified applicants, 2 very strong candidates for us apply to serve on the governing board. They are Mr. Lloyd McCabe and Mr. Andy Bloom. So they are in the room with me right now. And our process tonight is 1 at a time. They're going to be interviewed by the governing board. There are 6 questions which a board subcommittee with Catlin and Jewel developed along with myself. Full disclosure, the candidates received these questions earlier today so that they could provide a little thought and be organized to respond to them. This is not some sort of gotcha process here. We want thorough, thoughtful answers as much as possible. So I am going to do it the old-fashioned way and flip a coin to see which candidate will respond to the interview questions first. The second candidate will be asked to leave the room so they don't get to hear the questions, the responses really of the first candidate. We'll flip after the first round of interview is done. And then once the second candidate has been interviewed, both candidates will be welcomed back into the room to hear the board deliberate and hopefully have a motion and take a vote to make an appointment to the board. That is the objective tonight. For the record, this process can only be conducted in open session. The board has not had any prior or additional discussion to what you will see this evening here in this open meeting. So this is the first time that the board members will hear from these two candidates, and we're again welcome both of them in. So any questions?
Yeah, Brian, before we start, I have a question about whether we got Jewel on or not. I know Mark was going to work with her. Were we able to get her on, or is she going to come in? I feel like in order to do this properly, she should hear all of both candidates. And I
Agreed.
feel like we should
I do
move this
agree.
agenda item if she's not here yet.
Maybe you could at least get her on the phone
Maybe on
and
the phone, yeah, something. I feel like we
Okay.
can't do this properly. Either she has to be in or she has to be out. I mean, and I want her in,
Yep.
so.
Jewel is not able to log in at this time. I just send her the credentials again.
okay, so perhaps Brian can get her on his speakerphone, let her at least participate over the phone.
Doing that right now.
Perfect, yeah. I
Thank
just
you,
want to make sure
Catlin.
she can hear the, all the entirety of both
Yeah.
presentations.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right on that. Yeah, there is.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, Jewel. I've got you on speaker in front of the entire
Oh, no.
meeting that's being held. So because it's critical that you be involved in this, I'm going to use my speakerphone here and have you be able to listen
Okay.
and participate. So you are sitting here on the table now with my phone, and
Since you're not on
I
Zoom,
keep
you
not
don't.
the tiger.
putting the meeting
Fabulous photo.
password, and it says that it's incorrect. So, anyway.
Yeah, so this will work for now. And unfortunately, the
Okay.
Tiger King just appeared on the
They'll keep it
screen.
entertaining.
So
Just
thank you,
hoping
Mark.
it stays PG on our Zoom bombing.
Absolutely right. So I'm going to flip the coin. Andy will be heads and Lloyd will be tails. So that's Andy heads, Lloyd tails. It's just a good old fashioned quarter. And it is tails. So that means that Lloyd will go first and Andy will go second. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bloom to kindly leave the room for us. Thank you, sir. And if you don't mind closing the door behind you. And Lloyd, I'm going to have you come over here in front of the camera.
Good evening, Lloyd. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Thank you for applying. We very much appreciate your participation.
Well, I should thank you for allowing me to apply, and regardless of the outcome, my wife and I are always here to help the district any way we can, period.
We sure appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm just going to read you the questions that the subcommittee came up with. You've had a chance to look at those and you can just give us your answers, okay?
Okay.
Great. Okay, so question 1, please describe your involvement in our schools, the community, and the district.
Okay, I currently serve as the chairperson of the Dixon High School Ag Advisory Committee and have been on the advisory committee for many, many years. I have attended the Ag Farm Committee meetings that were initially held before they started construction on the farm. My wife and I have financially supported numerous livestock projects from Dixon FFA for the last 15 years. I was on the Measure Q School Bond Committee, and I have attended district LCAP meetings and have attended governing board meetings. In terms of the community, I have served on the 36 Agricultural District Association Board of Directors, known as the Dixon May Fair. And I currently serve on the Solano County Farm Bureau Ag Ed Foundation, which raises scholarship funds for seniors in all the high schools in Solano County.
Great, thank you. Okay, question 2. What do you consider to be the most important responsibilities for a governing board member?
I think the most important responsibility which this board has carried out is to maintain the fiscal integrity of the district. And especially in these times. I mean, we're embarking in uncharted waters. Nobody knows what the next day is going to have. What we do know is that if the district is not fiscally sound, then there is no district. And that hurts everybody in not only the school district, but the community in large. Of course, school boards are appointed to establish educational policy based on goals and visions set by you. And of course, you're responsible for holding those districts responsible for those goals and visions that you establish via the educational policies. And then lastly, it's to ensure that all students in the district have an opportunity to reach their educational potential and achieve success. That's our number one priority. We're here to help all kids, not some kids, all kids. And how we do that, of course, is always open to debate, but that is your mission.
Great, thank you. Okay, question 3. We are in an unprecedented time as we respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you see as the most critical priorities of the district at this time, and how do we best address them?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I'm not sure I have the right answers, but here's my gut. This is what my gut tells me. Number one, we need to ensure the district makes fiscally sound decisions when the state of California is heading in uncertain times and probably into a major recession. We don't know what the budget's going to look like, but the governor has indicated that the budget he proposed in January of $222 billion is there are 3 areas he's going to prioritize, and the rest of us are going to be lucky if it's just a no COLA. I'm praying, I'm hoping that education is not badly hurt this year. However, if this recession continues, you're liable to face 2007 all over again, when education lost $18 billion. And that will put the board in a very difficult situation in terms of how to create fiscal soundness. Of course, in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're here to strengthen online student instructional learning, attendance, and assignment completions. I find this, what's interesting to me is that I've had close friends who teach at Cal Poly who are teaching classes online right now. And they've conceded to me that they don't know if what they're teaching is actually working out there in the field. They don't know. And they're concerned about that. And then 2 days ago, a student teacher from Winters High School called me from the ag department and said, Dr. McCabe, I just started an online lesson with my kids, but I don't know if they're being attentive at all. I don't know if they're learning. And so these are really concerns that this district is going to have to face, as well as all districts in California. Assuming that students will return on the campus in the fall, developing strategies dealing with on-campus student and staff social distancing protocols, i.e. classroom setup, eating at the cafeteria, extra/intercurricular activities on campus. How are you guys going to handle that? I mean, if we have to enforce the social distancing protocols, does that mean that only part of your kids come to campus each day and that you have some kind of modified schedule? Or how do you do classrooms? So most of the classrooms at Dixon High School were never designed to have a 6-foot spacing between students. And so how do you work instruction that way if you have to space kids 6 feet apart? These are interesting questions. I don't know if they have answers right now. And of course, it all could change in the months to come if this pandemic lessens or goes away. Retraining teachers on the most effective online learning strategies and techniques. I think come August, you're going to find every teacher in the state of California going back to the classroom in terms of how to teach effective online learning techniques. Because right now, I suspect tens of thousands of teachers are doing it, but they're not sure that anything they're doing is being conveyed to the students. And so how do we manage that? What do we do? And so those are some of my thoughts. I have others if you'd like to hear them, but those are my thoughts in terms of the pandemic in general.
Okay, great. It looks like Jewel is with us, so thank you. Welcome, Jewel. You are muted, Jewel, so you'll have to get unmuted. Okay, number 4. Given the current fiscal uncertainty and declining enrollment in the district, it's likely that the board may need to consider budget reductions in the 2020-2021 budget year. Name at least 2 areas of the budget where you would consider cuts and why you identified these areas.
I find this question to be the most difficult of all the questions you're asking. Because no matter what the board does, it's a no-win scenario. You're gonna make people mad no matter what. It's like in February when you guys had to lay off 23 plus classified and certificated staff, and you reduced the instructional budgets by $500,000. That was not a popular move. But once again, I get back to what the board's responsibility is, and that's to ensure that the district is fiscally sound, period. That is your responsibility, which means you're going to have to make unpopular decisions. There is no doubt in my mind when I sat in the audience in February, when you laid those folks off, that none of you wanted to do that. Absolutely none of you. And you probably, some of you might have gone home and cried that night because it so upset you. But that was your responsibility to make those fiscally sound decisions in the face of what we're going through right now. And so I get the fact that whatever you do is not going to be popular, but once again, what is your responsibility? And your responsibility is to ensure the integrity of the district. And that's the bottom line.
Okay, great. And number 5.
I should go on. You asked me to name 2 specific
2
things.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, I wandered a little bit. You need to rein me back in.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I thought about that hard and long, and I just went, there's no really good answer to it. But here are some of the things that you might have to do down the road. For instance, you might have to eliminate all extracurricular activities on campus until the pandemic is over, which means things like football and basketball and everything else. And that will not go well in the community. You do know that. They will explode. But once again, I don't know how you're going to enforce if in fact the pandemic is still with us, how you're going to enforce the social distancing protocols with extracurricular activities. I don't know how you're going to do it. And I don't know anybody that does know how you can do it. And then you're probably going to have to reduce those elective courses not required by law. And of course that, touches me deep in my heart because I'm a career technical person. I'm an Aggie. And when you laid off an ag person in February, I initially was going to say something to the board, and then I saw the data. Well, you guys made the right decision, period. That's what you had to do. And that's what you're paid the big bucks to do, is to make tough decisions like that sometimes. But it wasn't popular in the audience, I can tell you that. and no doubt is not popular in the community. But once again, I know I sound like a broken watch. You're there to protect the integrity of the district. That's why you're there. And to create policies that will help the district help all students become successful. I would also suggest that the board and the superintendent further review and reduce those non-instructional items that are nice to have on campus, but are not required by law. And I know you've already cut $500,000 out of the budget on these non-instructional items, but you may want to review the list and go through it again. It of course depends upon what happens in the August revise, because normally we have a May revise, but since income tax, state and federal income tax aren't due till July 15th, you're going to have an August revise. So that's when you're going to really find out how bad the budget is going to be. And I think I've indicated, the governor's indicated that there are 3 areas in the budget that are high priority. They all relate to the pandemic. I'm just praying that a zero COLA for education is the worst that comes out, but it could be worse. And so you as a board will have to prepare in the eventuality of making further cuts, and they will not be popular, my friends.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, Dixon USD's mission statement is to close the achievement gap by preparing all students for college and career readiness and success in a global society. How would you describe our mission to someone who is unfamiliar with it, with a focus on helping them understand its 4 components: the achievement gap, all students, college and career readiness and success?
Yeah, this is a very, this is an interesting question, and I'm balking a little bit. I'm going to tell you what I tell folks who come into Dixon, who are friends of mine, and they ask, well, how is Dixon unified? And this is what I tell them. This is what my wife also tells them as well, that the Dixon Unified School District is striving for excellence in all of its elementary, middle grades, and high school programs, so that all students have an opportunity to reach their potential and achieve academic and career success. That's what we believe. That's why we support Dixon Unified. And that's my answer to your question, which may not be the right answer, but it's the answer I'm going to give you.
Okay, thank you. And number 6, the last question, what would you have hoped to have accomplished at the end of your term?
I would hope that based on 45 years of experience in education, that I would be able to provide thoughtful insight to the board, the superintendent, and his staff on the current challenges facing public education and Dixon Unified School District, and then work cooperatively with said group to help all students achieve academic and career success.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your answers.
Well, once again, thank you for allowing me to go through this process, and good luck with your selection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, did we lose Jewel again?
Jewel, are you on the line?
Or on the phone?
She was on.
Yeah, she was, and then she was also on the phone, I think.
Is Brian in the room there?
I'm back in the room. I was just getting
Brian, did we
Andy.
lose Jewel?
She hung up and texted that she was in the meeting now.
No, she,
And now I don't
She
see
is
her.
not
Yeah.
in, she is not in the meeting.
Okay,
Okay, let's get her back on the phone.
let me phone her back.
she was on for a good chunk of that, but
Yeah. Hi, Andy. Thank you.
Hey,
for
Andy,
your-
how are you?
Good. How is everybody?
Good.
We're just
Yeah.
trying to get our other board member back on the line here.
Sure.
Is Brian still there?
Yeah.
This is all so funny. Like, who's in the room with you? Like, all we see is your head. Where's Jewel? It's like we're playing a game, you know, like a game of squares. You know, who's in that square? I don't know.
Well, I hope Jewel didn't miss too much.
No, I hope so either.
Hey, while we're getting her on the line, I'm gonna go use her.
Okay.
Is she on?
Jewel, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh,
Never
yeah.
mind.
Good.
Are you on the phone or on Zoom?
On the phone, and I put in it says unable to connect.
Okay.
Okay. Well, as long as you're on the phone, I think we've.
Yeah, you can hear okay?
Yeah,
And
Okay.
did you hear most of the answers on the last?
I heard everything until the very end. He was
Okay.
talking away, and the screen froze up, and that was it. And then it was the end.
Okay. Well, I think we're good to continue then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good because I heard everything.
Okay. As
Perfect.
long as you can hear, if there's a problem and you can't hear, please let us know so we can stop.
No, I can hear.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Andy, I'm going to just read you these questions. They're the same ones you had to get earlier, to see, and you can just give us your answers. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. All right. Number one, please describe your involvement in our schools, the community, and the district.
So my family moved here in 2008, and I had 2 kids that started at Gretchen Higgins. By the time my third was born, they all moved over to Montessori. And then in middle school, all of our kids have gone through C.A. Jacobs. And then I now have a 7th grader at CA and a junior at the high school. I served actually on the school board from 2013 until 2016, where I had the opportunity to be a part of a lot of the decisions that were made at that time. More recently, I've been coaching at the high school for the last 3 years. As a member of the community, I've coached Dixon youth basketball, Dixon club soccer. I've had kids play just about every single sport that we offer here in town, and I've been involved with all of those things. As a member of the school board back in 2013 through 16, I was also part of the library board. Professionally, I'm a math teacher at Ohlone College out in Fremont. As a part of that job, I'm the math department coordinator, which means that I handle scheduling for all of our full-time and adjunct faculty. I hire all of the adjunct faculty, and then I handle some administrative duties. I'm part of our distance ed committee. So Zoom meetings are really nothing new for me. I've been leading Zoom meetings for the last month, trying to get our faculty up to speed on how to do this whole remote teaching thing.
Yeah, quite a challenge. Thank you.
It's an interesting aspect.
You probably haven't seen the Tiger King like us as much. Okay.
We have been Zoom bombed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Number two, what do you consider to be the most important responsibilities for a governing board member?
I think the most important thing is to be a stable hand, ready to support the administrative team and the teachers, and to keep in, our primary goal has to be on the kids and the education and making sure that the kids are getting the best education that they can, and that teachers are receiving what they need to make sure that the kids are getting what will be, especially in these times, incredibly important disruption in their lives. And we need to make sure that everything is as steady and stable as possible. And then once they leave us, they need to be prepared to move out in the world, whether that's going to college or heading into a career field. We need to be prepared to send our kids off, prepared for the next step.
Great, thank you. Okay, number three, we are in an unprecedented time as we respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you see as the most critical priorities of the district at this time, and how do we best address them?
I think right now, the number one thing that we need to do is make sure that kids are getting what they need for this year and are prepared for next year. And that is probably the greatest challenge facing the district right now, is making sure that that we finish out this year, but also making sure that we have this group of students who on March 13th, everything kind of fell apart, and they're going to come back in August. There's 8 to 10 weeks of material that perhaps wasn't covered or that students didn't learn. And so we need to be prepared as a district for what that looks like in August, and how teachers can effectively remediate and prepare students for what they need to cover next year. I don't know that when the Common Core standards were set, it was done with the idea that 1.25 years of material would be covered in any given year. And that's a consideration as a school board. Our job is to make sure that the teachers have what they need so that they can be prepared for what this looks like. And I don't know what the answers are for how August becomes an opportunity for students, in the best case scenario, to walk into classrooms and be educated. And in the worst case scenario, to deal with this again in October, or even beyond that. So I think that as a district, we need to be concerned with keeping our students safe and keeping them moving along the path in the best way that we can. You know, and at the community college level, we were kind of informed that this was an unforeseeable, extenuating circumstance. But if and when it happens again, it won't be seen as unforeseeable again. And so we need to be prepared, and that needs to be the focus of the board, I would say, for the next 6 months, is how to tackle this problem again, if and when it happens.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, given the current fiscal uncertainty and declining enrollment in the district, it's likely that the board may need to consider budget reductions in the 2020-2021 budget year. Name at least 2 areas of the budget where you would consider cuts and why you identified these areas.
I think the number one thing, first of all, any cut that we are forced to make has to impact students as little as possible. You know, the student welfare and the level of their education has to remain our paramount concern. What I'm going to say next, I'm going to say as an Olympic athlete and one who went to college on an athletic scholarship, and so recognizes the benefits, not just in school, but in life, that come with extracurricular activities. But when we are looking at what is potentially a devastating, looming budgetary shortfall, as hard as it is to say it, I think that extracurricular activities have to be one of the first elements that are on the chopping block. And that may not be complete and total cuts as much as, you know, we've been busing students to league games since I was on the board the first time. And that is an $80,000 to $100,000 a year saving. You know, we do have other things that could be cut, and nobody knows how bad this is going to be. And I don't say this lightly. As I said, I was a college athlete. I went to college to a school that I couldn't have gone to without a scholarship. So I say it with that behind what I'm saying. But when faced with the decision between cutting programs that can help students move on to college and career readiness and cutting extracurricular activities, I think that one has to make the hard decision first. Beyond extracurricular activities, I think that any capital improvements that we have, and I know we have a lot that are being funded in ways that we can pull back and hold off on some of those decisions. You know, they're difficult decisions. And when the conversation was happening initially to make the improvements to the old high school, I was on the board then. So I know some of the background to some of those decisions and some of the difficulties that come with pulling back on some of those decisions. You know, we've made some movements as a district to push things forward. But at this time, you know, we really have to weigh what must be done with programs and services that benefit students in the classroom. And I think that that's got to be our guiding light right now is, what can we do to preserve those great programs that we have as a district that benefit students.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, Dixon USD's mission statement is to close the achievement gap by preparing all students for college and career readiness and success in a global society. How would you describe our mission to someone who is unfamiliar with it, with a focus on helping them understand its 4 components, the achievement gap, all students, college and career readiness, and success?
I'm going to take them a little out of order. I think that for us, our goal has to be to get students ready to take the next step in their lives, no matter what that step is. And the idea of preparing every student for college is not what's in the best interest for every student. There is a great benefit to career readiness, and I think that for us, as we are sharing our mission with the public, that idea of helping students to find their path in the world and helping them to find what interests them and what where their passions lie, and finding careers that they can happily wake up and go to every day, it should be our number 1 goal. As far as the rest of the components for our mission statement, obviously our goal is to get every student to have options when they leave us. On the day of graduation, students should have the opportunity to do what they want to do. And so we should never be in the business of closing doors for students. Our goal should be to prepare every student to go to Stanford. Nick is outside, so I'll say Notre Dame. But if a student chooses not to go that direction, or if that's not the path that they want to take, it should not be because we've closed doors to them. And part of the decision around differentiation of math that was made 4 or 5 years ago when we adopted Common Core was about not closing doors to students. And there is an achievement gap out there. There is a need for us to grab the students who are not engaged and help them to become engaged and help them to meet their academic goals for whatever their professional career goals are from that point forward. And if we can do that, then we're successful. It is not necessary for us to send every student off to Ivy League schools for us to feel like we are successful. Our goal should be that when students come back and visit us 5-10 years after they graduate, that they're happy and they've realized their professional goals.
Great. And number 6, the last question. What would you have hoped to have accomplished at the end of your term?
Somebody asked me a question like this a couple of days ago, and I had to frame my answer in the term of a month ago or today. Because a month ago, my answer would be different. But today, I think that sitting in this seat for the next 6 months, we can only have one goal, and that is to make sure that we successfully navigate this crisis. And more than navigating the time that we have left for the rest of this school year, and this has been a devastating school year for high school seniors. I mean, there's just no way to look at this year's class in any way other than to know, the impact that this year has had on them. But we also need to move beyond this year and the disruptions for this year and look towards next year. And as I said earlier, our ability to prepare students next year and to make sure that this 12 weeks where students are trying to learn things at home, which relies on internet, parents that are available to help. I mean, we have a lot of parents that are still working and still doing things. We need to make sure that 12 weeks of disruption now does not become 1 or 2 years of disruption in their academic goals later. And so if I can look back in December and know that we laid the groundwork to make sure that everybody was able to come back in August, hit the ground running. And then if in October we have to do this again, we're ready with a strategy and a plan. And the disruption the second time is less invasive than it was the first time, then I feel like we will have been successful.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go and bring Lloyd back into the room. So just.
So Luke, how do you want to do this? Do you want us each to just do our own discussions individually and then take a vote at the end?
Yeah, I guess that would probably be a good way to go. We can just work down our normal seats, and if people want to make comments, and then we'll ask for a motion.
Perfect.
So I do have a question though. Do we allow public comment for this? Because I remember at my appointment that there was public comment allowed.
I think we should.
You have to, yes.
So after we do our board comments, then we can open up for public comment?
Okay.
Or do
So-
you want it before?
Are they both in the room now?
Yes,
Or-
they are.
Okay. So Jewel, are you on the phone?
I am on the phone.
Would you like to make any comments?
Are you talking about my decision or asking questions?
Just comments in general about both of the applicants, not your decision yet.
All right. My comment is that it's very difficult to make a decision because you're both so articulate and obviously caring and concerned and involved, and it's just since I don't know you, Andy, but I've heard wonderful things about you, and I ran with Lloyd, so you know it's a difficult decision, and you both hit on major points that resonate with me.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, any comments?
I just think that, you know, each of our candidates are both amazing and that they both bring a unique set of skills with them. And so I appreciate both of them for stepping up and to apply to give us good candidates to be able to fill this seat for the next 6 months.
Catlin?
I was just going to say same thing, sort of echoing Jewel and Melissa, that we are really so fortunate to have two excellent candidates. And I'm fortunate to know both of them in different ways. I served with Andy and I've known Lloyd in the community for a long time. And I think I just want to share a little bit about my process tonight. I decided to go into this process looking and listening to both individuals as though I didn't know them. And so just trying to really base my decision tonight on the answers to the questions. And again, I think Andy said it, you know, we're in, you know, what would I have been looking for a month ago is maybe different than what I'm looking for tonight. And so really trying to take a point in time snapshot, understanding this is a, you know, a multiple month appointment, not filling out the rest of, you know, the 2.5 years or whatever of John's term, but just a few months appointment. And who do we need in order to, you know, be a voice through this really difficult time of potential cuts and that kind of thing, and trying to hear, and it's difficult to do in just a few questions, but trying to hear who might be a person who can help us to do that. So just sort of sharing part of my process in my decision making tonight.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll just be a little repetitive and say both of you, we would be blessed to have either one of you on the board helping this district. You're both obviously so thoughtful, so intelligent. You made very good points about the importance, whether fiscal, of course, the kids, and all the difficulties we're going through. And so I hope whoever is selected, I hope the other individual does not take it as a rejection, because I would quite honestly be happy to have both of you on the board.
Absolutely.
I would have to step down myself to make that happen. So, and I'm not ready to do that. So, so anyway, thank you both. You're both amazing people, I can tell. I also have gotten to know both of you a little bit. So again, we're going to be very lucky to have one of you on the board. And with that, I think we should open this up for public comment. So if anyone would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand in Zoom, and Mark will go through and take people off mute so they can comment.
I am seeing none.
Okay, let's just give it a few more seconds and make sure no one comes in late. So how should we go about this? Should I ask for a motion, or should we go along and vote? You're on mute, Brian.
Sorry, let me unmute myself.
Bathroom. He's got to go to the bathroom.
So
That's getting pretty personal, but yeah, go ahead.
yes. I think it's about the dog.
Gosh.
Yes, Joel.
I'm so sorry.
Jewel, that's all.
We've had Donald Trump, the Tiger King, and Jewel's dog needs to go to the bathroom. So I think that is the triple crown of
Yeah, I
using
think it is,
moments
yeah.
in a Zoom governing board meeting. A couple things, Mark. Any hands raised yet?
Do not see any.
Okay, so another way we could try is if we do have everybody, we asked everybody to turn off their video. If somebody wanted to ask a question or make a comment, we could also allow them just to turn their video on so that we could see them and get their question answered. So that's another avenue. So process here. And again, hopefully we'll get some public comment, and if not, then I think it's the board's discretion how they would like to proceed. Our typical way of doing business is board president asks for a motion, see if there's a second, and then the opportunity is there for the board to discuss the motion prior to taking the vote. That strikes me as the normal way we do business, and probably makes the most sense for doing business here this evening as well, just to remain consistent in process.
Okay, one last check, Mark. Is there anyone that's indicating a wish to make a comment?
I am seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, do we have a motion from anyone on the board?
I'd like to nominate Lloyd McCabe to be appointed to fill the seat on our board.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would any board members like to make comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I think you have to do a roll call because we're on Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay,
think that
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Fair enough. So Jewel,
Aye.
was that an aye?
It was an aye.
Okay. Melissa?
So I actually was, I'm going to say no at this time, because I actually felt like Andy had some qualities to help us get through the next 6 months. So that's my vote.
Okay. Catlin?
Aye.
Okay, and so I will vote aye as well. Welcome, Lloyd, to the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
Andy, thank you very much for your application. I was not exaggerating in my
No,
comment.
Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I am going to extend Mr. Dr. McCabe the oath of office here. So,
Awesome.
yes, I'll have him resume this location over here. All right, so this is the office, the oath of office for a member of governing board.
Lloyd McCabe, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion. That I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of which upon I'm about to enter.
Okay, thank you and welcome again, Lloyd. Thank you
Well,
for your time that you're about to give.
Well, thank you so very much. I don't have words to express my thanks to you, but thank you.
Well, you may decide that that's not all
That's right.
you want to say later, but
Yeah, exactly. You may change your mind. Yeah.
okay. So we are now moving on to agenda item 10B, Mr. Giramonte, and the discussion of no pass grading.
Sorry, I just need to interrupt quickly. I need to relocate myself. Lloyd, you're going to stay here.
Okay.
I'm going to relocate myself to another room. 2 devices in here does not work well. So please begin the item and I'll be back on board here very shortly.
Okay. And we still have Jewel on the phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
Got
Jewel, I'm going to just ask you when you speak to speak loudly because it's not, I think, coming through the greatest.
I think Brian took her with him.
Oh,
She's not on yet.
okay.
I'm here. I'm going to try to get on again.
Okay.
Mark, are you ready for me to share my screen?
I am, Nick. Can you give it a whirl?
Hey, what do you know?
Look at that.
You're seeing the front page of a slideshow, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, are you ready for him? Are you ready for me, or is Brian on yet? I can't
It
see.
Brian
looks
is
like-
not on yet,
Okay.
but I am.
I'm back. Please proceed.
Okay, and Jewel, you're with us? Jewel, are you with us? Looks like you're muted.
How do I get unmuted?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
You did it.
You're
Yeah.
muted.
Muted. Don't touch anything. You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's proceed.
Okay.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Nick Germani. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. Going to give a presentation this evening on our secondary grading proposal during the closure here. And I do know that what I'm about to present tonight has created a lot of questions in our community, completely valid questions. I know a lot of emails have come in either through Brian or through board members or through site principals about these questions. So we are really happy to give this presentation. I would ask that folks keep an open mind going into this presentation. I think there's going to be a lot of good information that may calm some concerns that folks might have about what we're proposing. But then, of course, happy to answer any questions. I do want to also point out that we have a number of site administrators here to ask any questions or support as needed. So we have Principals Stephanie Marquez and Yvette Ramos from Dixon High School and Maine Prairie High School, respectively, as well as Jody Stubbe, the assistant principal at C.A. Jacobs. I also believe I saw Angela West and Bob Bigowski on the roster of names on there as well. So lots of folks be able to answer questions, but hopefully I can answer all of them for you. So I want to be really clear first about what we're proposing. So we are proposing sorry, I have to make an adjustment here to my screen. A temporary change to board policy or administrative regulations to move what's called a pass, no pass grading system for this spring semester. This would apply to all students in grades 6 through 12. And the pass, no pass grade will be based on individual teachers' evaluation as to whether or not a student met the essential standards of the course. We'll get into what all these are as we move forward. So why are we proposing this? Why move away from the standard A through F scale that we've had? And so there are a number of reasons for these, and I'm going to kind of dive into each one of these bullets. I think it probably makes most sense to reserve questions for the end of the presentation, because I think what you'll find is a lot of these bullets really are interrelated. And so if you want to interrupt and ask a question, that's fine, of course, but I think that we probably will be best served to wait until the end. So what are these reasons? We have a charge to do no harm.
Can you hold on 1 second?
Totally.
I can't see when your screen is shared, anybody's comments, so we're gonna have to wait till the end, please.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
I guess I more was referring to board members if they want to, I guess, interrupt.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll hold our questions to the end if we can,
Okay.
unless something comes up that we just can't wait.
Well, especially a point of clarity. If you know, I'll do my best to make sense, but occasionally, as you know, I can wander. So there are really 5 key reasons. Our first is our charge to do no harm in these unprecedented times. We have an obligation for equity and fairness. We need to think about post-secondary planning for our students. I know that's probably of all the areas that we've heard most concerns around, it's around this area. We need to think about student motivation as we're engaged in distance learning with teenagers. And finally, we need to consider the legitimacy of grades moving forward. So we'll start with that first one, that idea of do no harm. So we have from the CDE, this is a quote, that LEAs or school districts should weigh their policies with the lens of equity, the primary goal first of what we call doing no harm. We have students in lots of different states in our community, lots of different places of well-being. And we feel this will be a much more clear-cut approach for them and can help limit some of the anxiety that a lot of our kids and families are feeling right now. This will not negatively impact a student's ability to achieve their post-secondary goals. And that, I know, is a key point, and we're going to get into that later. And then finally, most districts that are issuing traditional grades, which is still a completely valid way of doing this. I'll get into the fact that we do have local districts that are sticking with the traditional grades, and that is fine for their context. But they've interpreted that charge to mean that a grade a student has at closure can't be lowered and only raised. And locally, with our teachers and with our site admin, we've got some concerns that student motivation will be impacted by this. And again, I'll get into that later. So our next why is really around this idea of equity and fairness. And so I came up with kind of 3 hypothetical situations that I think might serve to underscore what our concerns are here. So in our first example, we have a student who typically earns A's, a college-bound kid, etc., left school in March with a C, which is atypical for him. In the current situation, without the same amount of access, the same amount of exams, instructional resources, ways from which that kid can just recoup the points that he was short to get to an A, he fails to earn the necessary points to raise his grade to an A and finishes the semester with a B-. And in a typical situation, we'd expect that kid to be able to recoup those points and get to that A. So why would a pass, no pass in this situation benefit this particular student? Well, it would remove the stigma, and I put that in quotes, the stigma of a B- on a report card if this kid is really trying to go for the Stanfords, the Berkeleys, et cetera, out there, and would have no negative impact on his college admission status. Again, I'll get to that next. In our second example of a kid, we have a kid who leaves in March when we close, has an A in her class, and we have a do no harm policy where we say this kid cannot have her grade lowered, which I think we can all agree is a really poor way to sort of motivate a lot of our kids out there in the community. So I think there's an assumption that by going pass, no pass, we're actually letting kids off the hook, and that's not what we're expecting. We really feel like by having a really clear cut, do they meet the line? Do they meet the expectations? And we can hold this kid accountable and say, no, you did not do enough to be able to pass the class. You need to continue learning and doing work. And in our final example, as we can see here, I think kind of maybe a more traditional way we think about equity. We have a student struggling in March, failing 2 of her classes, begun to turn it around. And this is a kid who, and we have these kids confined to her rural home with no internet access and is caring for younger siblings during the closure, is unable to recover her grades and finishes with failing grades. And she needs to repeat the courses in order to graduate the following year, which we know can be really challenging for students, especially ones who are already vulnerable. So we feel like in a pass, no pass situation, we could really focus on the essentials for this kid and provide a really clear path to passing. Teachers can define those essential standards and assignments, and the kid will not be overwhelmed by kind of all the stuff that's typically associated with trying to earn a letter grade. Furthermore, the BPAR as written, we have an incomplete process where if this kid really was not able to engage at all because of the situation described, we could issue an incomplete to this student, and we've asked that next year that student be allowed to recoup those essential assignments and essential learning so that she could earn passing grades and not have to repeat multiple courses in order to stay on track to graduate. So kind of 3 just sort of examples. There obviously, every kid is different. Some kids these don't apply to. I don't mean to imply that these apply to all kids, but I think just in our thinking around this, I wanted to sort of give three examples of possible situations that we would be in. So the post-secondary planning piece, and I know this is the one that's probably going to perk up most ears out there. So I would really encourage everybody, if they haven't yet, to read the statements from the University of California, the California State University System, as well as the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in California. So the long and short of it is this: these systems are saying students will not be penalized if their school goes for pass, no pass. This includes any student in high school right now, not just our seniors. I know some people are dubious about that. We can only take what these fine institutions say on their face. I know there's been concerns about out-of-state systems. We're in a situation right now where hundreds of thousands of millions of current high school students across the United States are going to have pass, no pass on their transcripts for this semester. There are huge systems out there that are doing this. There are small systems and everything in between that are choosing this. We also have a question around, if a lot of school districts are going with the do no harm approach by not lowering grades, the fact of the matter is, it's our admissions officers will not give a lot of credence to, or a lot of credibility to students who've been issued grades for this time period anyway. They just don't mean the same. An A will not mean the same as it has in the past. A C won't mean the same. An F won't mean the same. They just will mean very different things. And admissions officers are going to account for that. They have to. So locally, again, this is best post-secondary, just kind of the concerns. Travis in Solano County is going this direction. We have Davis Joint Unified has gone pass, no pass. I heard from Folsom Cordova today, since the recent ad, have all opted for pass, no pass. And then of course, one that CDE started out the gate was Palo Alto Unified, which is a district that sends kids to, you name the university, and they've got kids there. So, and a lot of folks are moving in this direction. Again, not all. I want to be very open. There are 6 districts in Solano County, and 4 are going to stay with a version of letter grades with slightly different policies about how they're issuing them. And 2 of us are proposing to go with this pass, no pass. But just because Solano County is, 1/3 pass, no pass and 2/3 not, that's not necessarily the rule elsewhere. So lots of places are going this pass, no pass. And finally, from Stanford University, who I'm loath to quote for the reasons that Mr. Bloom addressed earlier, they have a challenge success program, and they issued the following guidance, which you can read. And they're encouraging all districts across the country to shift all grading to credit incomplete, another way of saying pass, no pass, for work during this time of remote learning, and to reassure all families that COVID-19 has altered learning environments for almost all students. Institutions that have traditionally relied on grades will not disadvantage students as a result. These are graduate programs, the NC2A merit programs, among others. Okay. So this other piece about student motivation, which I sort of touched on earlier a little bit, we really feel like we can hold kids' feet to the fire on this. It just prevents kids from simply staying with the grade they left. By having clear focused essentials on which they can focus, we feel like we can have fewer kids that just will feel overwhelmed and give up from this process. I do not have secondary students at home. I have elementary students who are in day 4, different district of distance learning, and we're already running into that a little bit. So I think this one is actually more important than I think we sometimes think it will be. And finally, it really also forces the hand of our teachers, who have done an amazing job so far. But we really want to avoid the temptation of busy work. We want kids focusing on what is key as they wrap up this year in a way that we obviously didn't expect. And this sort of forces the hand of like, what are the key learnings that kids need to be working on, and let's stay focused on those. And then finally, this idea of this legitimacy of grades. So, and I alluded to this earlier, a letter grade implies a specific level of achievement. And we can stand by that in ordinary times, the teacher can stand by the grade that he issues or that she issues. And we feel right now that will be pretty difficult to justify. And so I do feel like we need to point out to the board and anyone listening that parents and guardians have a right to challenge a student's grade if they believe that the grade was issued incorrectly. And you can see the bullets there for the reasons that this is quoted from board policy. So you can see those reasons that are there. So I think it's important to note that this doesn't happen very often. I was Dixon High School principal for 5 years, and we ran this a handful of times where there were questions around essentially challenging a student record. And we always try and manage it at the school level and with the teacher and with the parent. It's never gotten to the point where it's gotten to the board. But if that's not resolved, parents will always have the right to be able to appeal a decision in writing to the governing board, which would result in a hearing that the board has to weigh in on what the grade is. And that can be pretty messy. There's a lot of legal ramifications in that. Ed Code is very clear, again, in typical times, that the teacher is essentially the say-so on grades. I worry that the legitimacy of our ability to say that at this time will be more difficult for us to defend, frankly. So, and I'll point out, this is per grade. So if a kid challenged 6 grades, that is 6 different chances where the teacher would have to come in and defend the grade that he or she is issuing. So there's this whole legitimacy thing as well. So I know there's some questions around how we would do this. The first step really is communication. We've got draft communications pending a board decision that would go out to the different stakeholder groups. parents, students, and staff to let them know sort of what our expectations are with regard to these new administrative regulations. It'll obviously look a little bit different at our middle school, our comprehensive high school, and our alternative high school. They would need to sort of interpret the new AR, and make it work for their site. And then have principals really meet with individual departments and or teachers to clarify expectations as we continue to learn through this process. Step 2 is more communication. So this is where our teachers step in and really clearly define for their kids what it is that's essential. How do you get that P in this class as opposed to that no pass? They'll need to do some work on their grade books. This is so we can continue communicating with families, especially if the kid is in danger of not passing her classes. We'll need to continue to outreach to families that they understand that if they mail it in right now and don't do this, that a no pass is no credit, period. And so we need to make sure that kids are staying on what they need to do. And then we also have other staff that can help with this, our counselors, our parent liaisons, and our administrators to support this teacher outreach, if this becomes bigger than what we'd expect reasonably an individual teacher to do. Step 3 is more communication. And this is really more sort of outside our institution. So, folks who haven't done the work that I've done or that our current staff does may not know how this piece works. But on our transcripts, we have the ability to make a notation very clearly for anybody who's reading it and say, it's P, no P, pass, no pass for this semester because of the COVID-19 closure. Again, we anticipate, hundreds of thousands, millions of students having this notation on their transcripts across the country. We also do what's called a college profile every year. That's, doesn't change a whole lot from year to year, but we will update this so that it has the pass, no pass sort of scenario on there so that our private colleges and universities especially have that understanding. And then our final step, and it probably should be our first step, is just continue supporting our students. We know that social and emotionally we have kids that are hurting out there. I want to applaud Adrienne Lauder and her team for all the outreach they're doing to support our kids there. We're working on creative ways to provide Wi-Fi to our students so that kids who can't do this can still access it. And then we do have that incomplete process, which I think is really, really fair for our kids who maybe get ill, that's a possibility, or who just are in that scenario, like that third scenario student I described. We want to make sure that kid has a chance to recoup. So that was a lot for me. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or others may have.
Hey, board questions. Jewel, would you like to start if you have any questions?
I don't really have a question, but I just have a comment that when you were talking about the other school districts that are going past no pass, that the California School Boards Association has created a sample resolution, and they are encouraging districts to go past no pass also.
I hadn't seen that, Jewel. Thank you. Last week when I was working on this, I did try and see if they had sample board policy that we could copy, but I hadn't seen that resolution, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, there are policies and the resolution. So and with all the ed code and all listed, so it's on there. I can send it to you.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jewel. Melissa, questions or comments?
So, well, I have several questions flowing around, and Nick and I have talked a lot about this being on the teaching and learning committee, but I just am concerned, this is a concern of mine thinking about this, and I have spent a lot of time looking at both sides of this, is that, a student in a neighboring district that has grades and our student who maybe isn't getting grades, who have the same, credentials, if you will, if one having grades will have an edge over a student who maybe didn't, especially if that student had 3 AP classes and then they would have had a bigger weight towards their grades. It is interesting to look at the GPAs required to get into some of the UCs in this state, and they're much farther over a 4.0. So that was one concern that I've had. Another one about motivation is, I know in my household, my kids are motivated by those letter grades. And that's what pushes them, because they see that they might need to work a little harder to get the grade that they want. And my worry for my own kids is that motivation going to go down, because they can just do what they feel that I think the biggest thing here too is we have to have a line. What does a pass look like? What does a no pass look like? And then my other question is it possible for parents to challenge this if they really feel strongly about their students wanting letter grades? Is it possible that they could challenge this? Because we've had a lot of emails from parents and students.
So let me take those as they came. So, you know, to your first question, I think we just have to take those systems at their word on this. I mean, on my other screen, I have up what UC says, and it's just unequivocally stated, no student will be penalized in the campus admission review process for earning pass grades in A through G coursework. So, you know, I'll be blunt. I don't know how those admissions officers at this point could give a whole lot of weight to knowing what we know, that the learning that's happening out there right now and what it's usually compared to. That, again, that ages does not mean the same that it used to mean. What I think they'll probably look at is whether or not kids passed an AP class, you know, whether or not they did well in the AP exams that are upcoming. That I think is fair game, and this does not prevent kids from doing that at all. Yeah, with regard to the motivation piece, you know, I do think that will be an individual family, an individual kid piece. You know, I've explained my concerns on the motivation piece if we're not lowering grades as well. So I think that's piece, either way, that's worth noting. And then with regard to the last question was around, can parents challenge it? Yeah, I mean, what we have in board policy right now about challenging student records is what I already described. So what essentially they would be able to challenge is, at least in my understanding of this, is if a kid got a no pass, for example, a parent could theoretically challenge the no pass because that's the mark. As far as challenging the board policy goes, it's the board policy. I mean, Brian could probably speak more to that, but I don't see how that would be something that would be challenged.
And can I ask one more question too? That I wrote down, and sorry, I missed that one. So, you know, if you start listening to, you know, articles out there and professionals in this area, the likelihood of this happening again is highly likely. And so I get that first that we kind of said, well, it's only for this semester, it's just one semester. And I understand that, but according to what all the experts are saying, there's going to be, for the next 12 to 18 months, this is going to affect how we live our lives. And so it's going to end up being more than one semester. So then what?
So here's what I would argue there, and this is just me. You know, I can't remember if it was Dr. McCabe or Mr. Bloom, who in their interview earlier stated something around, we need to be prepared for when this happens again. And it's sort of a, you know, if it happens once, shame on you. If it happens twice, shame on me. When this happens a second time, we need to be more prepared than we were this time. You know, I think it's fair to say that we're working, you know, I've heard Brian, I think, describe this as we're building the plane as we drive it. We need to be ready next time this happens. And I would not anticipate coming back to you and asking for this next year, for example, because at that point, again, I think we can stand by the legitimacy of what we're doing. Our teachers will be far better at teaching in this environment. Our kids will be far better at learning in this environment. We'll have worked out a lot of the kinks with regard to access to technology, et cetera. Right, Mark? Putting words in his mouth, I'm sure. But that would be my response to that just right now.
Anything else, Melissa?
Nope, that's all.
Catlin?
So I have a couple things. One, I actually read the letters that came out, or the letter was on the universities and the private colleges were all on the same letterhead. That came out as part of the negotiations with the governor's office. So I read that early on. And like you said, that's super clear on what they're going to do and how they're going to handle that. So I was really reassured even before we began to discuss that was the direction that that they were asking districts to go. But as it came to our district, I wanted to review it just from our own lens. And one of the things that came up for me was if we decided to retain letter grades instead of go pass, no pass. So when my son took honors physics in 2017 and got an A in the class, that A was based on a variety of things that cannot be offered now. So
Sure.
walk on water and marble madness and some things like that that cannot be offered now, and that nothing like that can be offered now because we can't even ask kids to, for instance, go to the store to get things to create something in their own homes and then replicate that. Even if we can't offer the swimming pool, we can't even offer something in their own swimming pools, right? Because we can't ask for those certain things, right?
Sure.
So my question would be, wouldn't we then have to, I mean, and I guess this is part question and part sort of my feeling is that in order to preserve the integrity of his A in 2017 and the A's in 2018 and the A's in 2019, right? And the A's before that, we would have to say anybody who takes honors physics now could never get higher than, say, a C, right? Because you can't possibly, you can't measure a body of knowledge and curriculum now against an A in 2017's honors physics and say those are equitable. So you would have to say what we're offering now is different, but it's not equitable to what those A's were. And if we're going to maintain and say that we have this rigor and that this honors class is in fact an honors class and not just a physics class or a science class or something we're offering, in order to really this particular semester say that to get an A in honors physics is an A in honors physics, can we do that? I mean, is there a way to measure that against our other years? And so I guess that's sort of that's where I'm really stuck, right?
Yeah. And that gets kind of the legitimacy question for me. I mean, I don't believe that any district who's maintaining letter grades is sweeping the say you can't get honors credits or anything like that, but it's a fair question, Catlin.
Yeah, and so I guess that's where I'm really stuck on this, is that while I think there are some ways in which, I applaud our teachers. I think they're knocking it out of the park in a million ways, but you cannot replicate 2019 or 2018 or 2017's A in honors physics because you can't offer what honors physics was in those years. And so I, as a board member, I want to maintain the integrity of our of our body of knowledge that we put forward. And I can't say with authority that you can get an A in honors physics this year. I can't say that because I don't think that we can offer the same curriculum that we offered in those other years. And so then that sort of, crashes down this house of cards about whether or not we can say that about anything for me. So I think that's kind of where I'm struggling, and I'm asking for an answer, but I'm also understanding that there sort of isn't an answer to that. But that's really where I'm struggling.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Catlin?
No.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions, and
Don't forget Lloyd, Mr.
Lloyd.
Oh yeah, Lloyd. All right, why don't you go first? I apologize.
I have no questions at this time, though both Melissa and Catlin do bring up excellent points.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to kind of go through these. I get the issue of the consistency of grades. I get the issues of equity. My kind of question is whether having pass, no pass would be better overall in meeting those different things that you put on one of your slides, as opposed to having the grades with a floor or some other similar type system. So I'm just going to ask a lot of questions that kind of came up in my head.
Okay.
And see what you have to say. So first of all, and this is a very basic starter question, can we have a different system at the middle school versus the high school?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I asked that, obviously, one of the big things we're talking about is impact on post-secondary application. And that's really not an issue at the middle school, right? We're talking more about the high school kids whether they need grades. So that was one of my first questions. Another one was, if we were to adopt the pass, no pass model, what is a pass? What % would be required for a kid to get a pass?
So that is a different way of thinking about how we do grades. So, and Stephanie Marquez, who's on here, I call her out, has done some really good thinking about this and having conversations with her staff. We really need to shift people's thinking away from a quantitative, if they get this many points, then they're over the line, and more to a qualitative, did this kid do what he or she needed to do to be able to pass? Now, we still record those things as pass, no pass into ARIES. Ultimately, we are not removing the teacher's ability, the teacher's right, frankly, under Ed Code to issue the grades. So we can't, I can't define, I mean, I see lots of teachers on here, for example, right? So I can't define for Ms. Jones what a pass is or a no pass is in her class. However, we can absolutely work with them very closely to understand how we communicate that, what is good practice here. And I think all of our teachers have shown really a lot of, so I don't know if I'm answering your question though, Luke.
Well, yeah, you are sort of, and I'll just tell you, I mean, part of the issue for me is when I'm watching the Olympics, okay, I like track because they run the 100-yard sprint, you tell who wins, who has the best time. And no offense to anyone that loves this, but whatever it's called with the dancing with the ribbons, okay? It's very subjective. And it's not to say that experts in that sport can't tell who's better than the other. But so, you know, our old rules, when we looked at the ARs and everything, they say grades are at these percentages and all this. And if we're going to talk about a parent might be able to challenge whether it's a grade or a no pass, if it's left up just completely subjectively to the teacher, and there's no data to support what the ultimate grade is, whether it's a pass or a grade or a no pass or a grade, aren't we leaving ourselves open more to those kinds of challenges?
So that's an interesting question, Luke. So here's what I would say. Despite the way that we outward appearance, grading is already a subjective endeavor. And what makes the sort of the A, B, C, D, F grade scale possible is that you have a preponderance of input there. You know, kids are in a class for 18 weeks, doing work, taking tests, taking midterms, taking finals, all of those things that really sort of build a, to use an attorney term, that sort of build a case for a grade. And right now, I don't think that we have that in most cases. We've got 2 months of sort of traditional work and then 2 months of very, very different, very, very new, and a lot of questions about access and assessment and all those pieces. Pass, no pass is a much clearer line, yes or no, as opposed to these sort of subtle gradations that have to happen if we're issuing specific letter grades.
I'd like to add a little bit. Yeah. I'd like
But
to-
what about the people that have tried to
We've got
be where they're
somebody-
trying to be?
Yeah, we've got somebody, hold on, we're not ready for public comment yet. So if we can hold off, please, until Luke asks for that. I just want to add a little bit. And when I sent an email out and we got it on Facebook and everything else some time ago, and I said in that that I knew that each one of our teachers was going to be doing their very best to provide the best educational activities, the best learning activities, the best education that they could to our students at this time. And I continue to believe that sitting here this evening. Whether we're talking about this model that the administration is proposing tonight, a pass, no pass, or the typical model, the regular model that Catlin spoke to in particular, we have to trust our teachers in assessing student levels of performance. And for me, the determination whether it's the letter grade or whether it's the pass, no pass, I trust my teachers to make those decisions every year. And this is different than we've ever had to do hopefully it's the only time we have to do this. And Nick's earlier point of we have to be ready for alternative version of education 2.0 if that comes in the fall. But I just wanted to express my confidence in our teaching staff to navigate the issues around determining pass or no pass.
So I just want to make one thing clear, Brian. You just said pass, no pass, or our current system. Those aren't the only two options, though, correct? I mean, we've got different districts in our county that have chosen to do some kind of adjusted grading systems and such.
Well, they're still doing letter grades.
Yeah.
Right, but it's not just A through F. They're putting floors. You're entitled to the grade you had when you left the school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe having an incomplete option if kids have access problems or
Sure.
don't respond, that sort of thing. So
There are all those additional components. Sure.
Okay, that was one of my concerns. I mean, I anytime, and it's not a distrust of teachers at all. I think actually they've been given such a hard situation right now to have to deal with. But I do think systemic approaches are better than just letting everyone do their own thing. And, if we're talking about having it equitable for all students, and yet, we spend time under the normal grading system, having departments try to come up with guidelines on how they're going to grade certain papers so the teachers are somewhat similar between their different classrooms and all that. I have a concern that, if it's just completely subjective, what's going to happen. So
we can still do that work, though. I mean, that we still wouldn't necessarily stop that work. And I will point out that even with those department pieces, teacher A gets to say, and that is very clearly defined in Ed Code and in board policy right now.
Okay. So have you gotten feedback from DTA and from the teachers where they lie on this?
So we relied on our site principals to have those conversations, and don't have Mr. Bledsoe here this evening, but the word we had from him was that he talked to his leadership team about it. They had some questions, but were in support. We had Stephanie Marquez, who's at Dixon High School, who talked to her teachers, and they're in support. And Yvette Ramos, same message from Maine Prairie. If any of you guys want to jump, well, I don't know if we have to call them up or if they want to jump in. And
why don't we, Stephanie, why don't you unmute yourself and share your comments, please?
No one asked me to unmute myself. Hello, everybody.
These are different times. These are different times.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to chime in here, and I'm happy to answer any particular questions. But I want to start with we and I speak for our teachers and everybody at my school. We grieved this when we had to look at our kids and leave and leave them behind. And we gathered ourselves together, and I know no one here is saying anything negative about our teachers, but the amount of collaboration, the amount of teamwork, the amount of togetherness that our teachers have been able to find with each other, the guidance of our leadership, our department chairs, they're meeting, the first couple of weeks daily with us as an admin team and are communicating to their colleagues. And we are meeting weekly or bi-weekly now and trying to do what's best for kids. I have heard clearly from my lens, from universities and the secondary options for kids. And I think with everything I have professionally, and as someone that has a senior at the high school and a senior in college, that the only way we can go is pass, no pass, and I'll just say that here. It does not mean that we're throwing away grades. It means we're offering accurate grades in a time when kids need some support and our teachers need support. We've looked at a pass being a student that engages in the assignments that the teachers have to show the understanding of those essential learnings. If students do that, they pass. If they don't pass. It's there is a clear goal there. And we have to be careful of taking an old quantitative system and translating that into a qualitative system, but there are criteria, and our teachers are working really, really hard on defining those criteria and keeping kids motivated. I, for one, am so impressed with the way our teachers got together, determined what was essential, and are providing engaging, careful, thoroughly competent assignments for their kids.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Yvette, if we can go to Yvette, please. And for those who don't, I'm referring to Yvette Ramos, who is the principal of Main Prairie High School.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Yvette. We do.
I have to agree with Stephanie about a lot of it. And for my side, it's a lot different. I have kids who have struggled since kindergarten to do well in school. And this pandemic has just been one more curveball in their game. I would have a hard time with the integrity of a letter grade at this point. And it will give students an opportunity to help their families while still working on school-related assignments. I have a lot of students who are working now to help support family needs.
Okay. Thanks, Yvette.
Okay. So just a few more, some of my concerns, you talked about lack of motivation. And one concern, like Melissa voiced, I have a child who works hard for her grade. I wonder students that, maybe had an A or a B when they left school aren't going to have to do much to keep a pass. Is that going to hurt their motivation, or not having to work to improve, just doing average work? Is that going to hurt their motivation?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I have the exact same concern with the approach of really a kid's grade can't be lowered or can't be lowered much. I think we'd run into the same thing. I see this as a unique opportunity, frankly, for us to pivot away from the only reason we do this is for a grade. The reason we do this is to learn things, and we can refocus ourselves on, frankly, what I think is the right thing to be focusing on, which is learning, not the grade. One should follow the other, not the other way around, right? Now, I realize that will sound like a crazy optimist person, and I will own that right now. But yeah, I mean, I do think that we're not in a situation right now where I've seen anybody. In fact, the strongest language I've seen is actually Vacaville's to lowering grades, but pretty much everyone else that I've seen is kids can't go lower than what they left with. And I've got concerns around motivation with that. We're not saying that with the pass, no pass. If your kid left with a B or an A and then chooses to not engage, we're saying that you cannot do a no pass in that situation, which is a little different.
Okay. So some, we talked a little bit about AP bump, and this is another area I have difficulty. And I recognize none of these systems that, whether it's pass, no pass, or something like Vacaville's doing or some other district, none of them are perfect, obviously. This is a very...
Thank you for acknowledging that.
This is a very difficult time, and we're trying to come up with novel responses that are the best they can be for all the kids, And we have kids that are babysitting at home, and we have, increased rates of problems, violence at home, different things. So, I understand that the universities have said, we're going to accept pass, no pass for classes we traditionally required grades. And they've said, we're not going to penalize kids for having pass, no pass. But I just have a hard time at the end of the day saying, okay, so if you have a kid with an AP class with a pass and another kid with the same AP class with an A, and the grade point average is higher because of the A, how is an admission department at a college supposed to weigh that? I mean, are they just gonna say we're not gonna
Mhm.
count the entire semester for any student that applies to us? Because I haven't heard that.
Sure. So I think the best way to answer that question, and my answer will be imperfect as we're doing this, is some of that is already baked into how admissions are done. We know that they know that kids come to the application process from all kinds of different places, from all kinds of different schools. And so I'll give an example of, most of you know, I live in a community in Winters, much smaller than Dixon, much smaller high school, not able to offer nearly the same amount of AP classes as, say, Dixon High School is. The universities have a way to account for that in their admissions process. What they tell us is your kid should take everything that she or he can take at your school. Take full advantage of the program that's offered because of the zip code that they live in. We're not going to penalize them for that. So I think that they're savvier and more nuanced than we give them credit for sometimes. And again, I'll keep coming back to the fact, I think we have taken them at their word. They're telling us that they will not be penalized. And again, I go back to, I think, some of the issues that Catlin raised and others. It's a legitimacy question. So what? If they get an A for this semester, we know that it will not mean the same thing. But your questions I'm not trying to dismiss the question, Luke. I think it's a good one. And like I said, my answer was going to be imperfect there, but that's my best one.
I just have real concerns that, and we got a lot of emails and stuff from parents and students alike, and particularly students that made the conscious decision to take, multiple AP courses, do a lot more work than the normal courses. And now they're being told basically, you're not going to see the benefit of that.
So what I would say to those kids is where they can still see the benefit, and what already, frankly, has a bigger influence on this anyway, is take the AP test and do well on it. Learn the stuff, because that is something that is normed. And the other piece, I'll go back to and address this. Again, we're not talking about a handful of districts that are going this direction. We're talking about some of the most high-profile districts in the state of California that are going in this direction. If you ask me to pick 3 districts in our area, well, Davis Joint, Folsom Cordova are 2 that send about as many kids to elite universities as any around, and they're going in this direction. You couple in Palo Alto and a lot of ones in the Bay Area. I'll leave it there.
Okay. So a couple other questions. So what have they said they're doing with the SAT this year? Is it not?
It's not happening. Yeah.
Okay. And so, that just raises again to me and it's not an issue with this year's seniors because they've already had decisions made, but let's look at the juniors. So if they hadn't already taken the SAT and they couldn't take it now, and maybe this goes on, and so is the grade point average going to end up carrying more weight because they don't have an SAT score? I don't know. Yeah. I'm just thoughts and concerns.
No, and totally legitimate.
Okay.
Can I chime in on this?
Yeah.
This is Stephanie. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to chime in. I think that, and I'm not going to go so far as to, weigh in one way or another, but I am. Every high school has a unique relationship with post-secondary institutions, but it's not static. It changes year to year based on program offerings, opportunity for kids, what's happened when kids apply to college. They use our school profile and we say, this is what went on while this student was at our school. And that relationship our high school has, like other high schools, is unique with post-secondary institutions, and it changes really year to year. And Brian and Nick, just nod at me if you need me to stop talking. So, for example,
I'm not in charge of this meeting. That's President Foster.
Brian, did you up? Oh no, Luke, you can talk. But so, for example, we are next to Davis High all of the time. Davis High has more opportunities for kids to increase their GPA through multiple AP offerings. That doesn't bode well for their kids sometimes. You know what I mean? Our kids taking advantage of what we have in our high school allows us to have an honest, dependable reputation with our post-secondary institutions. As the site leader, I want to maintain that relationship with post-secondary institutions where they can count on us for giving them an honest, accurate evaluation of student performance. That's super important to me, that when kids do apply to school, that they have that. So the GPA, for example, you're talking about, the expectation would not be the same for the current juniors when they apply, and not for the 10th graders when they apply to college. That GPA shifts, as it, like an example, is when the SAT shift from the old SAT to the new SAT, the expectation shifted. And there was actually a shift with individual SAT offerings. Sometimes, especially with the new one, there would be a particularly difficult one where kids all over did poorly or less well. And they actually even take those numbers into account. That's not me.
Okay.
That's all I have to offer unless you have other questions.
I have more questions, so feel free to jump in. I mean, I'm not going to shut anyone down because I want to fully hash this out as much as I can before I vote on it. So, okay. So as a practical matter, we have some classes that traditionally the teachers and the grades help direct whether the kids go into the next accelerated class or something, like if it's from IM1, IM2, you know, whatever advanced classes. And we have things like sports that might actually, eligibility depends on grade point and things. We have things like California Scholarship Federation, where those grades require. Have we thought about how are all those things going to be addressed if we don't have grades?
Yes. Yes. We're working with CIF now. I'm sorry, I haven't talked to CSF now, but I'm sure they're in the line with the other group that had CIF athletics we've been working with. They totally get it. Our math department is actually knocking this out of the park. I mean, all of our departments are, sorry, everybody else, but they know exactly what they're doing. They're focused on delivering essential learnings in all of their math classes so that kids can come back in the fall and pick up, and they know where everybody should be when they come back in the fall, including our AP Calculus kids when they go to college and you know, take what they need to take. So yes, we're in contact with all of those organizations, and we're sharing that information with our teachers as they make their decisions.
Okay. So this is kind of backtracking, but if we had a parent challenge a no pass, how are we gonna, how would we support the teacher's decision there?
Well, I think that we would engage the exact, so this isn't touching, this proposal does not touch the challenge of student records board policy that's cited in the PowerPoint. So we would follow the same process that's there. The teacher, that starts with teacher, frankly, being able to cite his rationale for the decision. Again, we think that's a much easier situation to untangle with a pass, no pass, as opposed to why did my kid get a B instead of an A, or why did they get a D and they deserve a C, where that very fine gradation is very difficult to do. We also expect our teachers, as always, to be in communication with families of kids who are in danger of not passing. That's in Ed Code and that's in our board policy. So those things do not change.
Is there any reason that if we did one of those modified grading with a floor things, we couldn't have an incomplete for kids that had unique circumstances or problems, whether they be access, problems at home, whatever, so they could make up that information over summer school or the following year?
That's what Vacaville's doing. From what I read from Vacaville, is they do have an incomplete option.
I would say no, but I think one piece here that worries me on that is, what if a kid wanted to engage the incomplete process because he got a C and really wanted a B or an A? So what we would anticipate is that right now, the amount of students who would engage that incomplete process would be very, very small. We're talking, I I've got a number in my head I won't say, but we're not talking about a lot of kids. And that frankly would be more of an administrative function as opposed to a teacher one. We want the principal or their designees issuing those incompletes, as opposed to individual teachers, because that can get messy. And then they're working really in a one-on-one or very small group capacity to do that. But really any kid who didn't get the grade that they wanted, I would worry that they would want to engage in an incomplete process. And we're talking hundreds of kids then at that point, and that would be very messy. I don't know if that will happen. I'm just saying it's a potential.
Do we currently give incompletes?
In very limited circumstances.
And what kind of?
Typically, when a student is unable to complete their coursework due to illness, family emergency, tragedy, etc.
Okay.
Exigent circumstances is the best way to describe it.
Sure. Okay. I think that's the questions I had. Lloyd, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Any other board members have any other questions?
The only other question I had, and this is something I forgot to mention before, it was to the idea that parents are concerned that kids aren't motivated, and I was wondering what the options were for some sort of parent support, because we are asking parents to do some things at home that they're not been asked to do. We're asking parents to step up and teach in lots of ways.
Yeah.
And we have had things like Nurtured Heart come before and present, and I was wondering if we had explored options to support parents in their new roles as paraprofessionals or support teachers in the classrooms, or that kind of stuff. Because I believe that parents really are feeling the pressure of, how do I motivate my children at home to do this? And they're looking to things that have motivated them on the outside before, and maybe we need to offer some supports for parents.
So that's a great question, and formally, no. But that would be an area that we would need to dive into. And for any parent right now who's feeling wanting, my kids live with 2 teachers, now school administrators, and we are struggling along with everybody else on this. And you see the articles that have really started to come out this week. So I think it's an excellent, very fertile area for us to explore, Catlin.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just add a little bit. Adrienne Lauder and her team have been organizing and making available some resources, some avenues of support, obviously primarily focused on students, but some of them applicable to parents as well. I think as we continue on through this period, we're going to see everybody becoming more stressed, certainly as the economic pressure on families increases. We distributed 1,327 or thereabout Chromebooks out of the district office here over the space of 2.5 weeks. Whatever it was, and some families got more than one because they had multiple kids in the house, 3 or more kids in the house. And I stood at the door and kind of admitted everyone into the room, so we kept our social distancing in place during that process. And I asked everybody how they were doing, or how are you coping, or you guys hanging in there, all those types of things. And for some families, it's not very well. It is the answer, right? And I'm some families had their kids with them, and that was a range of no, I'm good, to I really miss school, and this is hard doing this this different approach. So, Catlin, your point is really well taken. With support for parents. I think it's an important component of this. You got some parents stressed out. I had an email from a mom yesterday or the day before, live out in the country, no Wi-Fi available. One parent works the day shift, one parent works the night shift. Don't have availability to even drive into town and sit in one of our parking lots at a school site and use the Wi-Fi network there, because it's a 1-car family out in the country. Talk about people needing support. right? The Migrant Center, which many people in this community aren't even aware of, 7 miles outside town. We will have somewhere between, probably 60 and 80 students out there beginning tomorrow enrolling back in school, in many cases, some of them brand new. Living in small cottage-like residences, I guess you would call them, 2 bedrooms, some of them large families, very basic amenities. We beam a weak Wi-Fi signal out to that facility from an antenna on the top of the stadium at Finney Field, 7 miles out. As I think about this issue, I think about those families in particular, and our need to support them. And obviously the administration put the recommendation for pass, no pass in front of you tonight, because that's after all of our conversations, and that includes involving principals, and that principal element includes the feedback from their staff. I believe that the pass no pass really doesn't do anyone any harm in terms of kids in AP classes and wanting to attend 4-year schools. I consider those like the Dolan kids. Both my kids graduates of Dixon High School and UC Davis, and I don't think there's harm done there. And Nick shared that idea earlier because of what the universities and colleges are telling us. And I do trust them. And I just think of all the families that are under great stress, students and families under great stress right now. And I believe the pass no pass option is the best way that we can support those families in this time and allow them to be as comfortable and secure feeling about school as they can be. So my homily.
Brian. Oh, go ahead, Jewel.
This pandemic, the point that resonates with me is this pandemic shines a huge spotlight on the inequities in our society, both in healthcare and in access and in resources. And for me, my heart goes out to those who struggle. And so that's why I'm leaning my decision based on the inequities in our culture. And I don't want to do anything to exacerbate that situation.
So I just, one of my thoughts, I guess, and I think we all recognize that something needs to be done given this situation to help maintain equity, to help the families that are having a difficult time. But if you're talking about families that are really don't have internet access, don't have the ability to continue to do the distance learning, pass no pass is still going to leave them in a no pass or at least a incomplete situation. Whereas if we, and I'm not suggesting this necessarily, but if we just said you got the grade you got when you left the high school, the kid might pass. So we're not necessarily doing them a favor going to pass no pass, are we?
True, but we still want them to be learning as much as we can do that. And I think the piece here to remember is that this really compels everybody involved, from starting with the teacher, with the supportive site admin in my department, to really clearly define for kids and families, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to learn. And even those families who do have that access, that's a much easier hill to climb as opposed to, frankly, the typical all day long, stuff you got to do to be able to get this grade. It doesn't, Luke, and to Jules' point, it absolutely does not 100% mitigate those things. It can't, right? This type of policy can't. But it's an easier sort of hoe for them to row. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I would add real quickly, we did receive a number of emails from parents and some from students as well. And I applaud everybody who contacted us. You know, we always talk about we don't hear from people except when we're cutting sports or band or something like that, something really painful. And so I really appreciate the level of attention and concern this has got from our community, parent community and student community in particular.
These are the right things to be talking about. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, they are. And I had a conversation, 15-minute conversation with a mom the last evening that we distributed Chromebooks here, and high schooler and middle schooler, and both mom and the middle schooler that day absolutely stressed out over a large assignment that came in that day that the student just didn't really know how to attack. And at that point in time, they were using mom's phone with a carrier that has a horrible reputation in town as a hotspot, and totally ineffective. And so I let her know about this policy discussion we were going to have and the decision to be made by the board, and talked about the idea of pass, no pass rather than a letter grade. And she was, please, for my family that's struggling, that is part of what would help us cope during this time. So, you know, I want to recognize that I think almost every email that I saw come in or was forwarded to me by board members was in favor of grading. We also did hear other voices that were in favor of the pass, no pass. Typically, those folks were not writing us emails. However, for me, that was more in the line for computers or talking to people out at the grocery store, things like that. So,
so one last question before I offer it up to the public to comment if no one else has any on the board. And that is, I know several of the emails I got asked about, can we do a system where the families can decide whether they have pass, no pass? So would you just preemptively address that? Because it'll probably come up from public comment.
Yeah, sure. So I really think that can get messy. And at that point, I do really worry about confusing our university and college partners. I envision a kid with a couple of P's and a couple of letter grades. At that point, that's a red flag transcript, because then they're starting to go, well, why did you take a P there and not an A, as opposed to you didn't have a choice, it was just P's. There you go. And then, you know, I know that that's an option at some colleges and universities. Frankly, they're more wired for that, I think, than we are, where kids, you know, students typically have that option. I really worry about everybody's ability in that scenario to make good choices for kids, and again raising some credibility questions with our university partners. And I've heard that come out. I know that in Alcalanes, Moraga, that was their first attempt at this, and it blew up, and they've now gone to pass, no pass, because that was just not going to be a good model for them. That's just one example of a district that somebody told me about. So sorry.
And I would just add in, I think that makes the job of our teachers even more difficult.
Yeah, sure.
You know, not that our teachers are fully capable of determining either the letter grade approach or the pass, no pass approach, but having to do both simultaneously, I don't think is quite fair to them, as well as all the other ramifications that could come up. You'd almost have to make people, you'd have to make people decide on the front end. And what if, you know, 2 weeks from now, I decide I want to change my approach? So it could be very messy.
So I assume your answer would be the same if it was a student and family decide all pass, no pass, or all grades, and you can't select.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, you're gonna have a classroom of of 30 kids, some of whom are on track to earn a letter grade, and some who are on track to get either the P or the no P. And again, I think that combination in a single classroom is not a good one for anybody.
Yeah, maybe far too unmanageable for the teachers.
Yep, just not fair to them.
Okay, any other board questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, let's open this up to public comment. I'm sure there's some people out there. I do have an email to read. Why don't I go ahead and read that first?
Is that John Geyer's, Luke?
I saw he was.
I saw John in the meeting. I don't know if he still is, and if you prefer to
John,
speak.
John is in the meeting and he has had his hand up patiently.
Okay.
He is the first in
if
the list.
I
Would you
received an
unmute him
email.
first?
Sorry, I received an email to be read in, so perhaps if I can do that and then
Okay.
covered anything to be read in. And this is from a parent, Margot Gomez. So I would like to voice my concerns regarding the pass-fail grading system and why I oppose it. My daughter has carried a 4.0 or higher all year and does so because she plans to go to college. She's a competitive gymnast and her goal is to compete in gymnastics at a collegiate level. She takes honors classes to help boost her GPA so that she has a better chance at getting a scholarship, as coaches look at her GPA first. It also will give her a better chance at an academic scholarship as well, in case she decides not to pursue gymnastics in the future for some reason. And then she attached a passage from, looks like it's from connectusfund.org. I'm not sure of that site, but it reads, under most grading systems in the United States, classes which follow the pass-fail grading system do not contribute any mark toward a student's final grade point average. The instructors will use marks like P or F to indicate that credits are awarded for progress toward a diploma, degree, or certificate. The transcript of the student, including the guidance plan, will see a benefit, but a great score won't give your GPA a boost. This may not always be a disadvantage, but it can be for students who typically perform at high levels in the classroom. Unless the materials are new, complex, or confusing, those with a GPA of 3.0 or higher will usually want to stay with performance-based grades to ensure they can maintain their placement for graduations. And again, that's sincerely Margot Gomez.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mark, would you unmute Mr. Geyer and we can find out if he wants to read his email or if you'd like me to?
This is John. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, John. Luke
How you
Foster.
doing?
So since you had sent in an email, we thought we'd call you first here. Do you want to read your email or would you like me to read it? Or would you prefer to just comment? It's up to you.
I realize it's somewhat lengthy, but I mean, it's up to you. I know some of the issues have been addressed, with regard to the colleges. I will say one thing. I mean, you guys have talked about the fact that the Cal State system and the UC system have already indicated that they would, recognize the pass-fail system. One thing that we've learned throughout this process is that while this pandemic is obviously affecting the entire country, including the world, our nation is not reacting to it in the exact same fashion. And what I'm not hearing is how out-of-state schools will view pass-fail grading systems. You're only talking about the UCs and Cal States, which obviously are extremely important to us. But I've not heard, well, what will Vanderbilt do with pass-fail systems or any other university outside the state? I will say, I got to be honest with you. I've been on this call for, as many people for nearly 2.5 hours, and I feel like this is somewhat of a fait accompli. We had a canceled meeting last week, and then we're presented with this PowerPoint essentially spelling out why we want to do this. I think we would have appreciated receiving this last week and at least had an opportunity to consider it. One thing, but I'll digress on that. One thing I think we've learned throughout this process is that we as a people have an incredible and remarkable ability to adapt. And What I'm not hearing tonight is a willingness, or I shouldn't say willingness, because obviously we're all dealing with, incredible stressors here. But what I'm hearing is, it's difficult, it's messy, and what I think what we're failing to recognize and understand is that the impact that this is going to have on children who have really worked their butts off all year, who have taken AP classes, and then are now simply being told, it doesn't really matter. It's all for naught because we want to close this gap. And I understand wanting to close the gap, and I understand being concerned about everybody, but what we're doing is we're not allowing the gap. We're putting a ceiling on, or a cap on achievement as well, because we don't want it to be too messy. We don't want it to be too difficult. We're talking about essential things for kids to learn. I have to be honest. I don't understand why we're, relegating this to just the essential things for the remainder of the year. Why aren't the kids, in class essentially? And I know my son's going to scream at me right now, but why aren't the kids in class essentially all day? I know neighboring districts, and I know teachers in neighboring districts that, class starts at 8:20. And I know you're going to say that, well, there's issues with being online for some. I understand that. And those are challenges we do have to face. But why not, we could still use, whether it be mail or have kids drop things off at the school and still engage in social distancing, whatever it may be. But I think we're really going to harm the motivation of children who have worked really hard throughout this year and want to excel. So, I don't know. It's just a lot of things I guess I could say and go on, and I don't want to do that and take everybody's time. But I truly believe we're going to have a profound impact on the motivation of kids who really want to excel.
John, so thank you for that. I want to leave it up to you, because I am certainly willing to read your email. It is kind of lengthy, like you said, but if you would like to just read it into the record, or have me read it into the record, or if you feel like it's been covered with your comments, or if you'd like to read portions of it or have me read portions of it, I'm happy.
You can go ahead and read it, Mr. Foster. That's fine.
Okay. Dear members of the Dixon Unified School District, we ask that the following be read and considered. We understand an issue is being presented at the upcoming school board meeting on Thursday, April 16th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. The issue on the docket pertains to whether or not the school district will adopt a pass-fail system as opposed to the usual grading system as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the impact it has had on the 2019-2020 school year. Obviously, these are unprecedented times. We recognize you are dealing with issues for which there simply is no playbook. We are all essentially winging this in the hope that we are doing the best we can, all the while keeping our primary goals in mind. The goal of the district, of course, has always been to provide a solid foundation from which our students can be prepared for college, careers, and success throughout life. In fact, that is part of the district's mission statement. Meeting those goals has always been your primary concern. In addressing the possibility of converting the grading system to a pass-fail program, we are having difficulty understanding the motivation for this suggestion. We trust it cannot be due to any kind of sense that it will simply be too difficult for teachers to adequately provide grades, or that it will simply be too much work. Please understand, we are not trying to impugn our teachers' integrity or commitment to the students of Dixon. We have been a part of this community for 22 years. All three of our boys started kindergarten at Gretchen Higgins, continued on to middle school at C.A. Jacobs, and our two oldest are now at Dixon High, the oldest of whom is on the cusp of graduation. The teachers in this district have been fabulous. When neighbors would tell us they were taking their children to neighboring communities such as Davis and Vacaville to seek, quote, better opportunities, close quote, we were always a bit perplexed. The teachers at the three schools our children have attended have inspired our boys to learn and achieve throughout, and for that we are forever grateful. We are all facing extreme challenges during this period. What message are we sending to our children that in these difficult times we have decided to take the easy way out and just call our grading system, quote, pass/fail, close quote. Dixon has some challenges that all neighboring that not all neighboring communities face. This mission should not result in the imposition of a cap on achievement in effectuating its goal of closing the so-called gap. Many kids at Dixon High take AP classes. By definition, AP classes are much more rigorous and require a sense of commitment by the student that we as parents can only dream of. The classwork is much more difficult. The homework is at times overbearing. So why do kids choose to take 3 or 4 AP classes per semester? They do so because of the challenges they present, because of the work habits they instill, and because of the rewards they offer for the future. If we are to convert to a pass-fail system for this semester, we must consider the ramifications this may have on our students' futures. What effect will this decision have on college opportunities? What effect will this decision have on possible scholarships? Will all universities, both public and private, give our students a pass because we chose to convert to a pass-fail grade system instead of the customary letter grades? AP classes have a profound impact on grade point averages. Some universities may give our students a quote pass, close quote, but what if some do not? And how will our students know when going through the application process? Having just gone through the application process with our oldest son, we are readily familiar with the average statistics for all universities in the state and many in various parts of the country. For admitted freshman students at the 9 University of California campuses in fall 2019, please consider the following. And then there's a list of campuses and grade point averages of freshmen, along with number of applicants. Los Angeles, 4.18 to 4.32, 111,306 applicants. Berkeley, 4.15 to 4.30, 87,393 applicants. Santa Barbara, 4.04 to 4.28, 93,442 applicants. San Diego, 4.03 to 4.28, 99,125 applicants. Davis, 4.0 to 4.26, 78,092 applicants. Irvine, 4.0 to 4.25, 95,566 applicants. Santa Cruz, 3.76 to 4.16, 55,868 applicants. Riverside, 3.69 to 4.11, 49,509 applicants. Merced, 3.45 to 4.0, 25,417 applicants. The University of California system is one of the most prestigious in the nation. The freshman class in 6 of the 9 campuses last year had average GPAs of a minimum 4.0 and higher. 8 of the 9 campuses had GPAs in excess of 4.0 on the high end of the range. A high school student does not achieve a GPA in excess of 4.0 without taking AP classes. It is impossible to do so, and yet it is practically a prerequisite in this day to gain admittance to any of the UC campuses. This, of course, says nothing about any of the private universities in our state. While some out-of-state universities may have more relaxed admission standards, of course, out-of-state tuition may then become a factor to consider. Our kids have worked hard all year and in past years as well for the goal of achieving success both in the present and in the future. Why would we tell them everything this year was for naught? Why would we dampen the fulfillment of their goals and their own sense of accomplishment this year? What impact would this decision have on their futures as well? This is going to be a rough few months, no doubt about it. Why would we want the impact to linger more than is necessary? We just can't understand the motivation. We thank you for your consideration, John and Angela Geyer. Okay, thank you. Any other comments you'd like to make, Mr. Geyer?
Why not? We were talking about someone, I think you, Mr. Foster, asked, well, why not, or could we allow certain classes or certain parents to basically make a choice? Why not allow a grading system for the AP classes and then pass fail for everything else, or for everything else where grades and GPAs are not affected by letter grades? I mean, I can tell you, I think most of the AP kids are really distressed by this possibility.
Well, and I think that that's mostly what we heard from are the AP kids. And though I find it, our mission is part of, closing the achievement gap. I also do not want to hurt those students who are in the AP courses. And that is one of my biggest concerns about all of this is, and we had a flood of messages and emails from those AP students and parents. And so that is one of my biggest concerns that I have going into this.
And it is for me as well. And that's why I asked a lot of questions because, I went through UC Davis and by today's standards, I wouldn't have gotten in there. So these kids that choose to take these AP classes, and yes, if they pass the AP test, that still looks good for them, but the grade point average is significant. And if we're looking out for equity for all students, that does mean all students. And so I am concerned about, is this fair to those students? Okay.
I agree.
Well,
Thank you.
we don't usually make a habit of commenting on public comment per our rules. Since we are public commentary and public comment, I just want to point out that this is an instance where what we're talking about is coursework that does not match our other coursework. So we're not offering the same things we've offered in other years in terms of AP coursework. So we're grading people based on a fraction of the coursework that's been offered in other years. So if we're really going to consider this in terms of offering letter grades, we cannot possibly consider giving someone an A this year in an AP class because that would degrade the offerings that we offered in other years. So I think we have to roll that into the mix too. All of these AP students, we could not possibly consider giving them an A and tell them with a straight face that this was an A that compares to last year's A's or the year before's A's, because that's simply not the case.
Well, forgive me, but I think you're comparing apples and oranges there then. I mean, if you're talking about comparing it to prior years, why can't we adapt the curriculum for the remaining 8 weeks or whatever it may be? And then, we adapt the grading system based on that.
Because it wouldn't be a full load of the coursework. It wouldn't actually, the whole point of the AP class is to prepare them for the AP test. And we wouldn't be offering the full load of coursework. So I think that's what we're saying is or that's what the PowerPoint was saying is that we're not able to do that. We missed many weeks of work already. And unless we want to extend the school year or look at some other options like that, we're just not simply able to offer that in this amount of time.
Nick, would you or Stephanie want to address Mr. Geyer's question about could we have grades just for AP or something like that?
I think I'll leave the grading question to Nick. This is Stephanie, sorry. But I will address the fact that the first entity I heard from as a site principal was the College Board. And the College Board stopped AP instruction and changed their assessment with closure. The College Board did, not individual schools. They said that the opportunity to earn that same coursework after the closure was not available to any kids. And in the sense of equity for our highest kids, they stopped instruction at that point and modified their exam. And I think it's telling that that is the very first entity I heard from.
Yeah, thank you, Steph, for that clarification. The test itself is now down to 45 minutes. Two-part examination, as I understand it, which is radically different than what has been required of students before. And I just circle back on the other question that was asked there about perhaps letter grades just for AP classes. Nick made a mention earlier about then you have a confusing, perhaps almost contradictory transcript. You have P's for some classes and letter grades for another, and that would perhaps be puzzling to the admissions folks out there, regardless of where. So I want to just in the interest of moving us forward and making sure everybody who wants to speak I want to reiterate what Catlin said a moment ago. Our protocol for our meetings is to not engage back and forth on public comment. And I think we probably have a lot of people who want to share. So if it's the pleasure of the board, I would request that we can stick to that to be able to move ourselves along and make sure that everybody has a voice in this process.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Mark, would you?
I have 2 more hands. The first is Regina Peterson and then Chloe Bear. So I'm going to unmute Regina right now.
Hi, I just had a comment about that because I feel pretty strongly about the having pass, no pass. My daughter is a high achiever too. She excels in school. She has a lot of self-motivation. I just feel like being home kind of takes away some of that energy already. So I feel like in this last 6 weeks of school that she's going to be fine and that she's going to get into a good college without having to maintain the same kind of standards that she had while she was in school. My concern is that we're talking as though the kids have had steady education going from March 15th until now. I mean, technically we've had 4 weeks without any school at all. And now they just started last week, and you're talking like they've never missed anything. And there's no way to make up for that amount of time in there. And then discussing GPAs that colleges require from previous years is not what they're going to be expecting in the future. So I don't think that's an accurate assessment of what colleges are going to be expecting from our students in the future, especially for those kiddos that are like juniors right now, right at this end of the year. And we are only talking about a 6-week period left in the school year. We're not talking about what's going to happen in the fall yet, right? This is specifically for right now, for these last remaining weeks of the school year. So I put my vote up for pass, no pass, and I think that makes it so that everyone has equitable access. Because even there are students that are high achievers that do not have the same kind of access that everybody else does. And I feel like if we say that a kid can have the same education at home as they do in the school environment, then why have schools, right? If they're not getting something in the school environment and they can do everything at home, well, why do we have it? There's obviously something they're getting there that they don't get in the home environment, even with the best parents. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
We're going to go to Chloe Baird next.
Hi, am I here?
You're on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chloe Bear. I'm a 6th grade English teacher at C.A. Jacobs, and I've been watching this whole time, and I just really want to thank the district and Nick and Nick's entire team for really working to so thoroughly gather reasons why they came to the decisions that they came to. I think that a lot of really valid concerns, especially about AP students, and I can, relate to that. I was an AP student, so I can imagine the stress that they would be feeling. So I wanted to thank them for their very thorough sort of thought process, and I think that a lot of people's concerns and questions have been thoroughly addressed by that. Just for what it matters for 6th grade, I think that a pass, no pass is the only logical way to do grades. I'm sort of talking to these teacher friends while this is going on, and none of my students are turning in A quality work, none of them. And I have some really, really amazing kids. But when you cannot be there to help them, to give feedback in real time, to do what you would normally do in a classroom, especially in an AP class, right, with the rigor and in the curriculum is just, it's so different. I'm getting very few B quality work, So I just think that this is probably the best decision that's for everybody, for all of the kids involved. And I just wanted to thank you guys for so thoroughly coming out and talking about this, because it's really nice to have people invested, so heavily in their children's education. We're working really hard from a teacher standpoint to continue what we can and to make up for that lost time that Regina mentioned and that Catlin has mentioned as well. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else, Mark?
We're going to go to Holly next.
Hello, this is Holly. First of all, I heard an argument that the AP classes won't mean the same thing because it's not the same coursework. However, many of our students have had A's the entire year, and we're talking about the last 8 weeks of school or so. So with all that being said, is this something we are looking at just for the remainder of this year? Or if this is going to continue and go on into August, we stuck adopting this ongoing until things go back to normal? If this does continue, does that mean you will not be offering AP classes next year?
So with your permission, Luke, I'll address that really quickly. That was more questions and comments. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So AP classes will be offered next year. Those course requests are in the system. We're beginning the work around, not beginning, but we're in the midst of the work around the development of the master schedule. This pass no pass option is for the remainder of this school year. I think during our board candidate interviews, we heard from both Lloyd and Andy, and it's been part of this conversation already as well, that we have to be ready for round 2 of this. You know, there's plenty of information suggesting that we'll see flare-ups or we'll see some situation where we could be doing things such as split shifts of school or every other day, all sorts of other things. So we have to be ready for any eventuality next year. You know, none of us anywhere had the opportunity to plan for where we are right now. We do have that opportunity, and frankly, I would say we have that obligation to plan for this for next year and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Next person.
Next person is Penny Solano.
Hi, I want to echo a lot of the sentiments that John said. I have a lot of concerns. My son has had straight A's this whole semester, and I feel like it's very degrading to him to suddenly say, oh, your grades don't count now, we're just going to give you a pass-fail. I also am concerned about his motivation. I don't really see a reason for him to be very concerned or about his grades if he's going to just get a pass-fail. I also think we need to really remember that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And a lot of these kids, we're talking a lot about the California colleges, but not all our kids are going to California colleges. I have 2 kids that graduated from Dixon High, and neither one of them went to a California college. And that brings up another thing that I don't think has really been addressed, is that we don't know how this will affect scholarships. I have a really hard time. I mean, I understand they're saying that, you know, you're not going to be penalized for a pass-fail, but I have a really, really hard time believing that you're not going to reward other kids who have a higher GPA than the kids that, I mean, if it was me and I had to pick, I'm going to pick the kids with a higher GPA. And if we do pass-fail only, we're not allowing our kids that option. I also wanted to share with you my sister. She works with the school in El Dorado Hills, and this is what she gave me that her school is doing. It said, the CDE has given districts direction to do no harm. Parents and scholars have the right petition a letter grade by May 22nd if having passed grade for the spring semester might harm your children's college prospects. And I just think that that should be an option for us. I think that right now, if we do this, we are harming students. That we need to make sure that our students have both options, that maybe we automatically, I mean, I really think we should consider that maybe automatically it is a pass-fail, but if you believe, as the California you know, CDE says that it's going to harm your child, you should be able to have that option to do no harm to your child. So I just feel like we're really kind of penalizing these kids that have worked so hard. They've already missed, my son's already missing his whole semester, his spring semester of sports. There's kids that are missing proms. They're already missing so many things that now we're going to take away these letter grades. It, to me, just doesn't seem right. I think that there's a way that we can meet needs by doing pass-fail. And I understand your concern also that, oh, pick or choose classes. I don't think that's how it goes. I think either you do a letter grade for all your classes, or you do pass fail for all your classes. I mean, you have to be willing to put in the work, and these kids have put in these works, and I just think we need to reward them for it. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Katie Tully.
Hi, everyone. So I definitely feel like I'm the voice of opposition here, and I'll just be upfront and let everyone know that I am for pass, no pass, just for this semester. I think we need to reevaluate moving forward, but I'll tell you why I have that stance. And first, I want to acknowledge that either way, whether we go letter grade or pass, no pass, there's a terrible inequity to our kids. Those AP kids are losing out if we go pass, no pass. And then our kids who have IEPs or trouble learning, I think that they're going to lose out if we stick with letter grades, as Chloe talked about earlier. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, we're a family where I have a student who graduated from Dixon High School last year. He did very well. He's at a California university, and he took some AP classes, didn't really have a lot of trouble getting into college. And then I have another student who's kind of the middle of the road. She's motivated by the class content and how it speaks to her. But these students both have support at home. We have internet access. Both kids have computers. Parents are college educated. But what I can tell you is my student who's at Dixon High this year, in the first week of instruction and into, early this week, we've had tears. Okay, so we've had some struggles. What I found is that my child is really having to relearn how to learn. Okay, so they're used to one-on-one instruction. They're used to being around their peers and their teachers. And it's not just that she's struggling with how to complete her classwork, but also just struggling with what's going on in the environment today, what's going on with the pandemic. And so that there's that emotional toll on top of just also having to complete your coursework. I think that, these are kids that, again, they grew up with technology, they're tech savvy, they've grown up with the internet, and we are having challenges at home. I don't want to disparage what some of the other parents have shared. I know the Geyers and the Gomez's and Holly, their kids are excellent students and they've done really well, but I can just tell you from my point of view, we're really struggling over here. And I think that if you were to kind of weight it in terms of those kids that do really well, especially in those AP courses, they're probably going to continue to do well in this environment. But those kids who really struggle are going to continue to struggle, and it may get worse. I think that in terms of the inequity, the inability to learn or to be taught for those students who struggle with learning is a larger issue than those who cannot receive an A+ or an AP grade. At least that's my point of view. And I just wanted to put that out there. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rebecca Jimenez.
Hello, this is actually Rebecca's daughter, Hannah. I'm a senior this year.
Can you guys hear that?
No.
Very difficult. No, we're not able to catch you. If you happen to have two devices going on in the room, it sounds like that might be what's happening. If you're zooming this on two devices, I'd turn one of them off, or have somebody tell your mom to leave the room there, kiddo.
All right, can you guys hear me now? She left.
Much better, much better.
Okay. Let me just introduce myself again. I'm Hannah. I'm a senior at Dixon High this year. And I just question and a few comments about the no-pass type of grading system. I had a question for the distinguished scholars. I myself have had this goal since I was like in 8th grade to be a distinguished scholar, and so many things my senior year has already been taken away from me. And I think one way seniors can really finish strong is through these letter grades, because that's the last thing we can do, especially with other cancellation of events that we've been looking forward to, most of our high school career. So I think that's why I would be for letter grades as a student. And I understand other points of views and how either way, if you pass, no pass, or letter grades, people are going to be mad, and that's just the way that it is. But I also have a question and concern for the impact on GPA scholarships, especially for juniors, because I myself got into Oklahoma State before I even started my senior year, and I got a scholarship before I started my senior year based off my GPA. So I think we should also consider how that will affect those scholarships and helping juniors who will be seniors next year pay for college, because obviously college is not very cheap. So any type of scholarships, especially academic ones, will immensely help them be able to pay for college. And I also think that the pass, no pass kind of takes away the integrity of education and keeping students responsible for holding up their grades, understanding there are certain circumstances and availability to internet and Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just my concerns on the pass, no pass system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Melanie next.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. So,
Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead.
so like Mark said, I am Melanie Torres. I'm over at CA Jacobs. I have to say, initially, I did have several concerns about this pass or fail situation that we're talking about. Thankfully, Luke did ask a lot of the questions that I have, and even more thankfully, I was happy to hear that Nick had really thorough answers for them. And like Chloe said, thank you for being so thoughtful and prepared with those answers, because I felt like I did get a lot of useful information on that. I was actually a little bit scared of the idea that what meant failing was suddenly in my hands and that parents could be really mad at me over that. But I do appreciate Luke's question in that and Nick's answers as well. I think Regina had a really great point about the lack of material that our kids have had for about 4 weeks. And again, like Miss Bear or Chloe said, I've also been seeing a lot of less than stellar work, which is really unnatural for a lot of my students. And what is really concerning for me is that I'm seeing several, as in it's more than a few, several of my normally A+ students, I can barely get the task out of my mouth and they're ready to do it and they're on top of it and they're excited. They're falling behind. And I'm much more worried about them as people and what's happening in their lives than I am about their grade. And obviously, the only way for me to be able to reach out to them would be through Wi-Fi and through time and us having the same availability at the same time. And that clearly has become an issue in our unprecedented situation. So in the course of this lengthy meeting, I think what I'm taking away from this is, in terms of my students, is maybe grades don't count, but you do, because I am very worried about those students that I am seeing falling away, and I know it is not their choice, and there's really not a whole lot I can do about that. So it is a very sad situation, I think. And I think it's sad all around. I feel horrible for all these seniors and juniors, and I certainly don't envy the board's position in having to make a decision on this, but I do appreciate hearing all the insight and all of the really genuine questions that have been asked. So good luck in your decision making, but that is my 2 cents as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Emily Mitchum next.
All right. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
We
go ahead.
can.
All right. So my name is Emily Mitchum, and I actually teach AP English at Dixon High School. And I want to echo what some of the other teachers have said as far as work they've been receiving. So I normally receive stellar work from most of my students, and I really enjoy teaching AP English. But the work that I got last week, I know that it was their best work that my students could do given the circumstances, but it was subpar to what I am normally used to getting from my students when I am there, and when I can talk to them and when we can really talk to each other. And that leads me into my next point, which is curriculum. So I have had to pare down my curriculum for digital implementation a lot. I have kept the essential skills and the essential tasks the same, but as my students can attest, most of my class is us talking to each other and discussing and listening to opinions and having those conversations, much like the conversations that we're having tonight. And that's really hard to replicate digitally. So we can have a Zoom meeting, but then there's the issue of time and accessibility. I did manage to have a sort of digital Socratic seminar on a Google Doc that was moderately successful, but it didn't even come close to us being face-to-face and getting to see each other and interact with each other as human beings. And I really don't think that there's a way to replicate that. And I can really see both sides of this argument. And I think everybody is making really good cases for both sides. And I'm happy that some of my students are on here so that they can see this kind of discourse happening. And I guess I just really wanted to chime in with the perspective of an AP teacher and just let everybody know that because of the because of distance learning, it's pretty much impossible to replicate what we would normally be doing in a classroom, at least in my classroom, and I know in most AP classrooms. And so that is something to consider, that, you know, as much as I try, it's just not something that is doable. And I think that all parties involved are doing what they think is best for all students, and that is our responsibility. And that's not a responsibility I think that any of us take lightly. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have, we had someone, they dropped out. Oh, there she is. I have Holly again.
You there, Holly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate that I don't think we can expect the same work out of our kids right now because we're not getting the same teaching. I think all the teachers are trying their best, and I think all of the kids are trying their best and dealing with the news and not being at school and not being around friends and sports and everything else going on. And I really am not for either way. I came into this thinking pass, no pass was going to be the best, you know, pass fail was going to be the best situation for everyone. But I don't think there is anything that's going to be a good situation for everyone. And everyone is going to have, you know, pros and cons to everything, and we just have to make the best decision. And I'm okay with whatever decision we make as long as it's for the remainder of this year and it's rediscussed if this goes on into next year.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for all your time as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Holly.
You have Tanya coming up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tanya Anderson. I'm teaching 6th and 8th grade history at CAJ. And I just want to echo a few of my colleagues that have spoke up about concerns with doing any type of letter grading. I am, just as they have said, received the work that I have received, which is in some of my classes, less than half of my students have participated in distance learning in terms of turning in work. It is far below what I'm used to seeing. And they are in communication with me, some of them multiple times throughout the day. They are working incredibly hard. We sometimes have had emails back and forth or Zoom meetings where we're trying to help one another through technology issues, trying to explain what they see on Google Classroom. It's quite a challenge. One concern I have is that 40% of the grade that I give a student in the grading system we currently have is based on their summative assignments. And with our current model of distance learning, I don't believe that I can give any summative work. There's no way for me to determine if they are doing the work themselves. Are they copying and pasting things from other sources? Are they receiving help? Are they doing it as a group? And to be honest, I'm not all that concerned about them doing the work on their own anyway. I'm concerned that, and I'm happy that they're making efforts to participate in this and try. And then the final thing I'll say, and this is my concern about my students, but also I'm a mother, although not in our district. I'm extremely concerned about the emotional welfare of our students. I know I have 2 teenagers, one a senior, one a sophomore. We have had serious issues in our home where, and I'm sorry if I get emotional, I am very concerned, more concerned about making sure one of my children is alive at the end of this than I am about whether or not they get an A or a B or a C. And so I just want to make sure that, and I know we all are very aware of the strain on them emotionally, but I think for me, that is my top priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that tough stuff, Tanya. It's real.
I don't have any more hands up right now.
Okay, let's give it just a minute in case anyone else has a question or comment. Now would be the time to make it.
Okay, I've just unmuted Mariella.
Oh, hi, this is Luis. I'm here with my wife, and we just wanted to make a comment on the whole thing. I was wondering, is it possible to just probably wait and see if there's any guidance from the state, whether it's the Department of Education or any state officials that, or even the UC system, the CSU system? I guess I don't know why we're so much in a rush to make sure that our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors do get a grade when we can easily probably go in the computer in 6 months and give them whatever grade they should be getting, depending on whatever guidance we get from state officials. I do understand that there's other districts that are giving in decisions, whether it's to give it a grade or pass or fail. I guess I don't understand why we have to do the same when we can just wait. I know the state officials, they're more concerned about what's going on, and I think we should probably focus on that rather than whether there's a grade or there should be no grade. We have several months to decide that. I don't understand why we have to decide it now. I think we should just wait and see what the state officials say, what the Department of Education or wherever they determine should make those decisions, or whether it's the UC system, the CSU system, or somebody that will make a universal decision for the state, not for every district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, would you or Nick like to respond to that quickly?
Yeah, I can quickly. So for our seniors, we certainly don't have the opportunity to delay a decision any further than now. The grading period actually ended, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week at Dixon High School, and we do owe students and parents progress report at this point in time. And we don't want to send those out blank. Well, we wouldn't send them out if they had to be blank. So we do want to have that communication. We're not going to get any more guidance from CDE or the state or the colleges and universities than we currently have. They have set broad guidance at this point in time. They have essentially allowed the school districts and other LEAs to make these determinations for themselves. I think the question around a sense of urgency, I think we all feel, and I think most places have already probably decided or are very close to deciding what they're going to do now. Any later, and it's almost too late, quite honestly. And one last note, trying to do something retroactive on the grades is just totally unfeasible. Some students wouldn't be here next year. I mean, certainly your seniors would be gone. Some students wouldn't be here next year. Some of the teachers who are here this year wouldn't be here next year. So trying to go back and modify or revising grades down the line just is impractical, unfortunately.
Thank you. Okay, any more public comment?
None at this time.
Okay. Give it one more minute. Want to make sure everyone has the chance to speak up if they feel the need. Okay, anything else, Mark?
Nothing.
Okay, then seeing no more public comment, do we have a motion on the update to board policy administrative regulations with regard to grading?
Luke, can I ask one more question? Is that okay if I ask one more question after going up?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm wondering how hard this would be for a teacher. If it is true that the work maybe is not to the level that it is, and I believe that it is. I think my kids sometimes probably try to get through their work as much as possible. If we went the route of just assuming everyone was pass-fail, but then like the El Dorado School District, if they had an opportunity to petition for letter grades by May 22nd, to leave that for an option. However, if it is true that the majority of students aren't doing, maybe the work that they were capable of, understandably, when they were in school, then maybe there wouldn't even be very many kids who would petition. I'm just wondering if that would be, and maybe we need to go to one of the AP teachers, if that would be too hard logistically to do. I mean, I think no matter what decision we make here, it is going to hurt students either way. And just because this whole stinking virus has uprooted everyone's lives. And I have currently, well, one young adult and 3 teenagers at my house. And so I have those sediments of just trying to get through the day too. I know a lot of students feel like, we're taking it away, but just the logistics, if that was possible, of somewhat of a compromise that everyone is pass-fail, but they would have to submit a petition by the 22nd. What logistics a teacher would have to do to maintain that?
Brian or Nick? Or Stephanie?
I think the middle school kids it doesn't affect the middle school kids at all. I think middle school kids is to say pass fail, to be honest with you, because the middle school grades are not going to affect college grades, and whether it will or affect them, none of us know. We're not college admission. We can take what the UC say, But I just am trying to think of a compromise. I know we're not going to make everyone happy. I know it's going to hurt, you know, some students or families either way, but what would be the logistics to be able to do that? And could it be done? I mean, other school districts are doing it, so.
Yeah, I'll go first, and Nick, I'd really have to hear about how they're organizing that. The logistics of it, you know, on the surface, and I don't know anything more than what was read, sound like a nightmare to me, quite honestly. That's I guess depending on how many people file for them. Let me qualify that. How many people
If
actually?
not, you're not gonna really try.
Yeah, if I don't have grades, I'm not.
Somebody needs to mute themselves, or Mark, if you can mute. I'm not sure how that would work, Melissa. I'll voice what I think our teachers would say, saying, please don't do that to me. It adds some layers of complication in what is already a really complicated situation.
Nick, anything you want to add?
Only that, again, if we're sending transcripts to schools that have different things on them, even if one kid had all the same thing and another kid had different, I think it just raises, we just don't want to raise red flags. This is, the pass no pass is an easily explainable thing to our post-secondary friends. This feels messier, and honestly, I would advocate stick with regular grades before you did that. That would be my, and I brought the pass no pass here as a proposal. I'll own that all day long. But I would say pick one or the other, the hybrid one. And I have not looked at El Dorado's. I don't want to impugn them. I'm sure that's working for them. I just know where our people are right now, and I think that would be really challenging. And we back up a little bit more even. I also question the ability of our kids, and I'm not talking about any, so a lot of people make great decisions on this or one way or the other, I don't know. But I don't know that they would be in a position to make a good decision for themselves at this point, or their parents would be in a good decision to help them make a good decision. Wow, that was a lot of decision.
Okay, thank you. Since we reopened board comment for that, do any other board members have any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion on the update to board policy administrative regulations with regard to grading?
I'd like to make a motion that we move to adopt the pass no pass administrative regulation board policy.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I think, Jewel, you're muted. I think I read your lips to say you seconded.
Jewel, are you able to unmute?
Jewel, take
that.
Could you repeat that, Jewel?
She looks like she froze, or she's really tired.
I second.
There we go. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Would people like to make any comments before we vote?
I just want to make a comment that I really appreciate everybody who weighed in tonight, and I know this is a very emotional decision for a lot of people. And I want to say that I'm making this motion as a parent of a child who was in all of the AP classes and who was in all of the honors classes and who was a distinguished scholar, and I'm making that through that lens. I would want this for him if this were his graduating year. I don't think, in hearing the teacher's comments, I don't think he would be getting A's or B's this year. I don't think a lot of kids would be. I think this is a year where people struggle. I'm hearing that all throughout our community from adults and kids alike. And I want that level of security for all of our students, that they can do their best and get a pass no pass, and that all the work they've done, that body of work that they've done, is held secure all year long and for their 4 years, and that they're not penalized this semester. So I want you to know that I'm saying it in that lens. From that point of view, that I think this is the best decision for all of the students in our district.
Thank you, Catlin. Any other board comments?
I will just say this, I do really appreciate the teachers and their perspectives of, and the time that they took to, be on this very long meeting and to weigh in. Because we certainly don't want our students to be hurt anymore, because the work and the amount of time that they're spend doing each class, we don't want them to be hurt by that. And we know that students aren't in school for 6 hours a day now. So I just want to say that I do appreciate the teachers weighing in on what's going on and what they're seeing.
Any other board comments? Okay, I'll just say, my difficulty with this, and I apologize to making this such a long meeting. I appreciate everyone's willingness to discuss this at such length, and thank you to Nick for the thoughtful responses. My difficulty with this idea, I understand maybe that work quality is not as good right now from the students. I understand the difficulties that students are having at home. My primary difficulty, and I know that neither option is great, is that are we doing harm to our AP kids when they apply to colleges against students from other districts that didn't go past no pass? And if those districts gave grades for the AP and they got higher grade point averages, is that going to hurt our kids in their applications? And of course, we can listen to what the colleges say in terms of the in-state colleges, and I appreciate that they've come out and said that, because it does help give us more information to make decisions. But ultimately, we don't know how that's going to shake out exactly. And so it's really a balancing of, which students are we helping and which students are we harming, and looking at the pros and cons of the different options. And I recognize we can't stay with grades as they are now. I just kind of question, is pass no pass necessarily better for equity for students that might have a difficult time at home or connection issues with internet or whatever, as opposed to saying you can improve your grade, but you're guaranteed to have the grade that you had on March 13th or March 16th when you left the school. And that's where I'm having a tough time deciding, because I don't know what the answer to that is. And I just wanted to make sure we all really heard what has been discussed, and that the public heard the thought process in making this decision, and that it's going to be a hard decision for everyone on the board. So that's my 2 cents. Does any other board member have a comment before we take a vote? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. Jewel? Oh, you're muted, Jewel. Or maybe she's frozen.
I think she's frozen.
Well, she made a motion, so, or did
She seconded, but we still have to.
Yeah, but I think we probably technically have to get her vote. Can we get her on the phone?
Yeah, we do. Let me call.
Brian?
Oh, there you are,
You're-
Jewel.
You're frozen. Let me put you on speaker and so everybody can hear this. A lot of people on this meeting don't trust me for the obvious reasons. Hold on a second.
She's unfrozen.
Okay, Jewel, we're
Okay.
taking the vote on the motion.
I'm just telling you that my decision
Here is horrible. It's, people start talking and then their mouth doesn't go with their face.
Okay, well, we've got a motion
your-
in a second, so we're doing a roll call vote. So you're up first.
If you can restate your vote, please, Jewel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lloyd?
Aye.
Thank you. Melissa?
Aye.
Thank you. Catlin?
Aye.
Thank you. I as well. Motion carries. Okay.
Yeah, and just the final word, as almost always, I do want to thank, this call has had, this meeting has had over 75 participants throughout. And if you take off the board and district admin team, that's still over 65 people. And the clock on the wall in my office says it is 8:50 p.m. We've been going at this a long time, and I can't think of a time lately where, by lately I'm talking about several years, where we've had such substantive and meaningful input on an issue. And I appreciate that the differing views were all expressed with such consideration and courtesy. We're a good model tonight for how things should be happening across our society right now that unfortunately in many ways aren't. So thank you to everyone for that. And to those folks who aren't in favor of the direction we took tonight, please rest assured that we're going to do everything we possibly can for your kids that you're worried about with this pass no pass direction. That's today. That's tomorrow. That's through the remainder of the year. That's through the application processes next year. That's in verifying things for scholarship groups. That's in conversations with your kids, telling them it's going to be okay. This is not a decision is made. We wash our hands of people who felt that we should have gone another way here. Our commitment is always to support our kids. And, this is my 32nd year in this business, and I don't think we've ever had an obligation to have a more heightened level of commitment and a greater sense of urgency about supporting our kids and supporting our teachers. So another homily done for the night. Just a very sincere thank you, and let's stick together as we move forward with this.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. So we're moving on to 10C, report on COVID-19 and district operations.
So I'm going to make this suggestion. I'd like to suggest that everyone trusts right now that we are working very hard in every aspect of making the district run efficiently and effectively right now. That's our classified staff who are on board right now. That is all the certificated staff, and we mentioned our teachers here so many times tonight. That includes our admin staff. It includes the board members. And in the interest of it being now 8:52 or 8:53, I'd entertain any specific questions that the board or community has, but otherwise suggest, and I'll have another frequently asked questions out on Thursday, that I address any questions that anyone has and not go through a department by department report at this point.
Okay, any board questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I just want to say, amongst my 3 kids that are at home, I have 18 teachers. And I have been checking each of my kids' Google Classrooms, and I appreciate all the effort and the hard work that the teachers are putting forth to try to figure out a way to educate our kids as best as possible, and to provide meaningful activities for them, and so they can continue to learn as best as we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Anyone else? Brian, could you just give a quick update on what the district is trying to do to look at helping with internet access for families that don't have that?
Sure. Thanks, Luke. Mark Monticello with IT, our host with the most for tonight's meeting, continues to explore options through some of the providers out there. We know that in communities served by Comcast, there have been more readily available options. We haven't had that in Dixon, unfortunately, at this point in time. It's an unfortunate encouragement that we've offered to some of our families is to go and park in the parking lot outside of school, or bring some chairs and sit down in the shade outside of school, and you're able to get on our Wi-Fi network. That, bless you. That is a lousy option to encourage people to have to take. So an idea surfaced from one of our principal meetings last week, and we've continued with some work on it, about the possibility of opening up our MP rooms on a very limited and controlled basis for those families who do have access issues with regards to internet or Wi-Fi. It's also a vehicle by which we might be able to provide some more specific support to some of our students with disabilities who are particularly challenged in many cases right now with this model of learning. So we are in the explore and get it planned mode right now. Obviously, with the virus, there's concerns about health and well-being that we believe we can address with some of the social distancing practices and a high level of custodial support to make sure that we're cleaning. So my hope is by the end of the week, we'll be able to make some announcements regarding this and try to get this additional level of support out there for our families who are needing it most.
Thank you, Brian. And if there is a family that has not yet picked up a Chromebook and has technology needs, what would we recommend for that?
So they should email schoolclosure@dixonusd.org. I think I've put that email address on just about every communication that we have put out. And again, it's schoolclosure@dixonusd.org. Our supply is pretty small at this point in time, and we are ensuring that we have machines for the students who are moving into the migrant center. But we are able to accommodate requests on that kind of individual or case-by-case basis with that email. So email, you need a computer. I saw one come in just before the meeting started. I'll respond to it tomorrow. But just situations where somebody somehow missed it all, or they have a machine die at home, email schoolclosure@dixonusd.org and make the request. Thanks.
And if we have someone that for some reason doesn't have email, can they drop a note in at the district office or something?
Yes, we have a drop box right outside Suite 11 in the main breezeway. It's just a little wall mailbox kind of thing, black metal. Put a note in there, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And I'm not working from home at all. They can also just come and bang on my window, 180 South First Street. My black Ford pickup with a beautiful Seahawks logo and license plate frame is parked right outside. So you can find the window just by looking for the wonderful Seahawk logo.
Okay, thank you. So are you guys seeing, I have a Zoom group chat here from Miss Santa Cruz saying, can we get a time
Sorry.
That's okay. Can we get a time all teachers have work up? 2 children, Dixon High and CA, 2 weeks in a row. Both my students only had work up Monday by 8:30 a.m. Work trickles in all day. Streamline, please, from 3 teachers each. Apologize for incomplete message. You want to address that, Nick? Or you're muted.
You're muted. Your money.
We're working on streamlining our processes and getting schedules up. You know, we're week 2, trying to get a little bit better, but I think that's a great note. We want to make things as easy as possible, and I think this is where my own experience as a parent, sort of getting a similar thing happening, is this is something that we need to continue to work on. So we'll be in touch with principals to work with their teachers as far as creating some schedules to go there.
This is Mac from Gretchen.
Hey, Mac.
Hi, can I speak to the times?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So at least at Gretchen, I know, and the other sites too are working on getting that process streamlined, but Gretchen Higgins families can expect a letter, if you will, a snail mail with a schedule with the times that each teacher will have their office hours and then their teaching and learning times.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other public questions or comments about the report on COVID-19 and district operations? Mark, any other public comments showing up?
I have one from Tad Smith.
Okay. Go Tad Smith.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I had a question as to why you're not having the stakeholders communication on your schedule for the school board meeting.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
So typically, in our normal meetings, we would have the opportunity for the labor groups, the CBOC, and parents associations and so on up at the front end of our agenda. I think, Tad, when we started going to this Zoom model, we took those off. We can certainly restore those, or anybody can always use the general public comment opportunity up at the front of the meeting to address anything. We also took off the cabinet members' 3-minute reports, which are held at the end of the meeting for the same general reason. But I meet with Luke and Catlin as board president, vice president every Friday. And so we can talk about that agenda format this Friday and look at restoring those if that's important to do.
Yeah, and Tad, certainly if the CBOC wants to have an opportunity at the next board meeting to present and give your report, certainly we can make that happen. So, drop myself and Brian an email and we'll make sure to get that on the next agenda.
Okay, I will do so. I appreciate that. And then to anyone that's interested, we're going to try to have a Zoom meeting of the CBOC at our next regularly scheduled time on May 20th. So since this format seems to work well, I don't see why it wouldn't work for the CBOC.
And Tad, for people that might want to attend that, where are you going to post your Zoom information on your website?
We'll post it the same way we post our board meetings. We've used district website, district distribution for that meeting as well. So we're covered there, completely covered.
Okay.
And I did want to say I had a good talk with Brian on Monday. So he's done a nice job of keeping me up to date as to what's going on. So thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Tad. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tad. Any other public questions or comments on the report on COVID-19?
I see none.
Okay. Seeing none, agenda items for future meetings. Lloyd, do you have anything you would like to request be put on the agenda?
Do not.
Okay. Jewel? Melissa?
No.
Catlin?
Nope.
Okay. Myself either. Any board announcements? Lloyd?
I have no announcements.
Jewel? Melissa?
No.
Catlin?
No.
I don't have any either. Coming events, May 7th is the next board meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have oh, Jewel, you just showed up. Did you have anything you wanted to request for a future agenda or announcement?
No, I'm not touching anything, and it just keeps going off and on and off and on. And
okay, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Yes.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
Aye as well. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.